Spahn from the 1, whose coverage has been strong so far tonight, but he breaks free. Deuce Spahn in a foot race. They'll never catch him. And the Noles special teams strike back quickly. 99 yards.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Deny run Bonner, fullback in, but Harbough, he's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown. It's Malachi Coleman.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Houston. Smith from the shotgun. Has the snap. Rolls to the right. Looks. Throws on the run. It is incomplete. Broken up by Jahdae Barron. It was intended for Stephon Johnson, the hero of the Hail Mary. And Jahdae Barron comes up, hero for Texas. The Longhorns are going to survive the trip to H-Town.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
May just barely got it away, and the ball is caught. Intercepted James Jackson for Virginia at the 42.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
It is good! The Utah Utes sink USC once more in another classic.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
A lot of grass to Klubnik's left. Here he goes. Wide side. Klubnik trying to break away. He cannot. It's Corey Flagg, and Miami wins.
Now here's Paul Catalina.
Alongside Jack McKenzie, who is producing today, Garrett, Smokey, Craig, all out with their high school football duties. Emery Winter is in the studio. He works remotely most days because Emery is in his last semester as a Baylor student, and he decided to take 412 hours. He sometimes has a couple hours to come and see us in person on Friday, so we know he's okay and not buried under a mountain of books. Do you actually have books anymore? No.
He says no.
No. He says no. No textbooks. Oh, well, just everything's online. Good for you. I used to spend like $700 a semester. And then here's how it used to be in the old days. And I'm sure there's people in the chat know this. So you'd go to the bookstore, Jack, and you'd get all the books you need. And you'd spend like $700 because the textbooks were ridiculously priced. Now, when I became an English major and they would give you you had to buy a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, that was $12, so that wasn't that bad. But early on when you have to take meteorology or whatever, you have these big expensive textbooks. And then they say, listen, you can buy this book used. It's only $50. And then you can come and sell it back at the end of the semester. And then I remember the first time I go to sell it back, the book is pristine. I didn't do anything to it. I barely, it barely looked cracked. And I go in and all right, you paid $50. Here's $4.
Yep.
This is it's devalued like a car from a chain smoker. Just drove it up the lot, smoked 2 packs a day, 10% of its worth. It was ridiculous. So I'm glad that you guys maybe don't have to suffer that. Do you pay what do you pay for? How do they make money off you?
Yeah, the books are online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you still have to pay for them.
Yeah, you just don't get to
unless
come
you
back for
unless you find if they actually have a hard copy book, but you can find a PDF of it online, or there's a lot of websites you can use. In fact, some awesome professors are now I have to say that you should get this at the bookstore, but if you perchance go to this website, you can find a lot of textbooks for free. So some professors are actually very helpful.
Oh, well, good. Didn't exist in my day. My favorite.
Yeah, the internet. It's this newfangled thing, Paul.
Yeah.
You might check it out.
We had it. There just wasn't much on it but porn in those days. Just sports scores and porn. That's pretty much all it was right in the beginning. But
this is a Friday show.
Absolutely. Here's my favorite racket, and we'll get into the news of the week. When I would go take a class, and the professor would be like, "All right, you need these 3 books," and you like look at the professor's name. It's like the professor's name is Doug Jenkins, and then it's 3 books all by Doug Jenkins. You're like, that's a way to get me to buy a book that no one else is going to read, buddy. Thank you. That's a smart one. So, yeah, Kyle says Paul was on MySpace. I was on MySpace. I like the vibe on MySpace much better than anything else now. All right. Week 9 is upon us, and it is not the sexy week. It's not the one that you look and go, oh my God, Ohio State and Penn State and, USC and Utah and like all these big time matchups that were across the board. There's going to be some dark horse upsets this week, the ones that you don't see coming.
Wake Forest over Florida State.
Honestly, Wake Forest has won that game 3 years in a row. So I don't think that's as much as people may think that. Wake Forest won 3 years in a row, and I believe like 5 of the last 8. So, I don't know how much of a Florida State, they still have a gigantic advantage in that series, but they're no longer. Wake Forest used to be the game like, all right, well, the backup quarterback can play in the third quarter. Not anymore. And it's Wake is a weird place to play. That game they're going to get up for, so no. I'm taking it very seriously, and I'm sure Mike Norvell is, considering he's never beaten Wake Forest. He does not know what it's like to wake up on a Sunday morning after a game against Wake Forest and go, okay, guys, moving on to the next one. We did great. Awesome work. Doesn't know it. Does not know it at all. So he would do that. I would think Oklahoma, Kansas would be an interesting one. If Oklahoma is still trying to, get over their whatever happened last week. But I agree with what Craig said yesterday. If I'm Kansas, I'm a little bummed out that UCF put a charge into them in Norman last week, and they're coming to our place to try to show the world that, yes, we really are the number 6 team in the country. We believe that we're better than the number 6 team in the country. We are charging ahead to the college football playoff, and the Jayhawks are the next team in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just UCF, I don't think anyone expected that. And so Kansas fans are probably teeing up like, hey, we're going to be a team that's going to be the first one to really show them, hey, they can't just walk through all of us here in the Big 12. But now there's no Jalen Daniels. You're still with Jason Bean. It's going to be one of the bigger games in Lawrence in the last forever. But I'm not liking their odds now that they're on a backup quarterback and OU has had that scare put into them already.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paxton says, can Oklahoma run the ball? That's a good question. They're going to need to run the ball consistently. If they're going to beat, the team. Look, if they're going to beat Oklahoma State, I think they're probably have to run the ball consistently because Oklahoma State is like they're going to run it at you with Ollie Gordon. So when Bedlam comes up here soon, and the last Bedlam, which I would have said all deals were going to be off if Mike Gundy, who has like seemingly moved on from that, but if Mike Gundy was having a rough year and like they needed that like shot in the arm of like, listen, guys, this could be like we can turn it all around for the home stretch, but they've already turned it all around at Oklahoma State. They're doing really well, but that game in a couple weeks is going to be some serious bad blood because it is the like it may not be the last Bedlam, but it's going to be the last Bedlam that we know about for a long time, and there's no urgency to schedule it from either side. So yeah, like they're going to have to learn to run the ball, and we'll see. I would think that they could run the ball in Kansas's defense, which is not spectacular and not mauling people up front.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm looking at that Bedlam game or just Oklahoma State as a whole this year, I'm thinking that might be one of the turnarounds of the year, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, you go from getting drilled against South Alabama, where Ollie Gordon only had 3 carries in that game, by the way. And I don't remember the circumstances, but in the first 3 games, he didn't have a whole lot of, I think he had 1 good game and the 2 others that were not all that great. He scored a couple touchdowns early, but he didn't have the volume of carries. And then all of a sudden, against Iowa State in a game they lost, it kind of flipped the script and Ollie Gordon became the center of the offense and started running everything through him. And so since that point has happened, it's made Alan Bowman be able to settle in a lot better and the receivers around them get a lot better. So, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State going to run the ball at you. Oklahoma should be able to stop the run. I'm not afraid of Kansas's defense, but I am afraid of Kansas playing at home, especially wanting to play spoiler, and they're still in this race. So,
yeah, they're absolutely still in the race. We saw what happened when Kansas went down to Austin.
Yeah.
And they had to start Jason Bean.
Yeah.
A team with superior talent won.
Yeah.
And how do you see the Texas defense versus the OU defense in terms of talent?
I think the OU defense is better today. I think the Texas defense is deeper, but they've got injuries in the secondary right now that are making it tough.
So it sounds like it doesn't bode well for Kansas.
No, exactly.
Being at home helps them.
Yeah.
But
being at home, being big noon kickoff, although Urban Meyer went to talk to the KU players today. I don't know how that's going to help them. But, little disappointed that that's still a thing.
Yeah, I would be too. I question how players view Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Obviously, national championship winning head coach, but there's plenty of other stuff that's been out there for kids to see.
Here's the message from Urban Meyer. Guys, you can live a life with no consequences if you do not acknowledge you've ever done anything wrong.
Honestly, the NCAA should think about how they're just saying that message to every kid who plays in the NCAA.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Look, as Lance Leipold's call, Urban Meyer's won 3 national titles. I get it. The guy's a brilliant coach, but I don't understand that, your kids aren't going to Google anything about this guy. They didn't hear about him, literally kicking his kicker while he was stretching and yelling at him while he was on the ground. I don't know. The way he, treated guys in Jacksonville, the way that, I don't know. It's so bizarre to me that, I don't know. And of course, part of that's Fox giving him a job again. I don't get it. I never will. But that's going to be the end of my diatribe today.
Yeah, I don't know whose kid he has kidnapped and is holding hostage in his basement as far as Fox executives go.
Who he's got pictures of. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. A&M and South Carolina this week, I would say would be an upset alert game for South Carolina to go beat A&M because A&M's offense has been so bad lately. But South Carolina's offensive line is so incredibly porous. And A&M's strength on their is their defensive line. Now, granted, they lost Walter Nolan a couple weeks ago, but their strength is still the front 7 on defense. And I just think Spencer Rattler is going to get mauled. So there's not one I see happening. Houston and Kansas State, don't really see that as an upset possibility game. Although I do think Houston has started to play better. I don't know how Houston bounces back from that Texas loss last week after they had Texas where they wanted them and needed them to be at the end of that game, because that's how Houston was going to win, is keep it close at the end and make the plays when you need to. And then get that, we'll call it a questionable call. I think it was bad, but we'll file it in the questionable category.
No, it was wrong. It was the wrong call.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any two ways about it personally.
Well, and
it was
and
a short spot, and the spot they should have given was a first down.
And here's what I don't understand is them saying they reviewed it, but they clearly why didn't they just stop down and get into it for a second?
Yeah.
What they've done in much less critical situations.
They also brought the chains out. Why didn't they have time to fully review the play during the measurement process?
Yeah.
And if they said they fully reviewed the play and they didn't have conclusive evidence, then I'm just back to being mad at the refs on the field for making the wrong call on the field.
Yeah. They fast forwarded through that one. And then to have to do that and have that disappointment and then go to a place like Kansas State, already tough to play. And Kansas State has, after that Oklahoma State loss, rediscovered themselves in a way that it seems like they do every year, where they kind of have a little dip and they have, they had the Missouri loss, they lost to Oklahoma State, and everybody's like, oh, well, I guess maybe they're not what we thought they were. And then Chris Kleiman's just such a brilliant coach that he and the staff go get in the lab and they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Oh, fixed, which is why, like, those things, if you're a person who's against the 12-team playoff, those are the kind of things that the 12-team playoff is going to fix, is that it gives great coaching staffs. And I think Kansas State has a great coaching staff. That Chris Klieman, he and his staff do great work adapting to losses. They've proven it over the years where they have a loss. They lost to Kansas State. He made a lot of mistakes in that game. They made a lot of mistakes in that game. And I don't even criticize him because I think he was trying to get a spark out of his team. And so he was taking some chances because they were really emotionally, mentally not in the game the way that they needed to be when you go to Stillwater. It's a tough place to play. They berate little kids in Stillwater. I know it. I know there's one here who got berated at Stillwater when he was young.
He's shaking his head, yes.
Yes, Emory carries that trauma with him to this day. I brought it up for the whole world to know. Look, guys, if Emory Winter rolls into Stillwater one day and starts throwing haymakers, you know what you did. He's out for blood. But yeah, it's a tough place to play. So they weren't ready mentally, and so he thought, all right, well, what can I do? Yes, I'm going to go for it on 4th and 7 at my own 38, because right now, if we don't get this, it's the late third quarter. Oklahoma State's going to be, they're going to go score anyway. Like that's what's happening. Or they're going to, even if they don't score, they're going to take 6 minutes off the clock because, they're just how the game is going. So I need to somehow grab back the momentum. And then his team didn't respond. And so, yeah, it makes him look dumb. But I don't think it is that. Sometimes you just do things because you've got to, and the card needs to go out the window where it's like, look.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you need to look at the card and go, oh, yeah, the card is right. But
I think coaches, honestly, maybe too often keep waiting and pushing back like, no, I don't have to make the game defining or deciding decision right here, right now. And they let it keep going, keep pushing it back until they can't make a decision that affects the game to that level. They just let the game beat them instead of trying to go win the game.
Yeah.
So I can honestly respect it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think that whatever their staff does, when you get to a 12-team playoff, there's a team like Kansas State that could finish 11th or 12th that would have been like, man, I wish we were playing this good.
And guess who the 5 seed does not want to see?
Yeah, you don't want to play that team. Look, Phil Bennett likes to talk about that 2012 Baylor team all the time when we have him on, and it's a great example. Now, they probably wouldn't have made it up to that point because they already had a few losses, but I promise you, nobody in the country wanted to play that team at the end. They might not especially if you were in a playoff scenario where you would have to beat them and then play somebody else a week later.
Yeah.
They would have worn you out because they were playing with a confidence and a vision like they didn't have early in the season, and all it takes is something to turn around. Look, part of the reason that Florida State was picked so high this year is because of the way they closed last year. Now, look, they lost 3 games and didn't deserve to be any kind of playoff, and probably wouldn't have been, had it been the case even a year ago. But if you took it, just say you take away one of the close losses they had to Wake Forest or NC State, you take away one of those, and they're 11-2 or 10-2 instead of 9-3 rolling in there. Do you want to play Florida State 12th at the end of the year? Do you want to say Tennessee gets hot again, right? Do you want to play a game especially if it wound up being in Knoxville? Do you want to play a game in Knoxville when Tennessee's hot? No. Yeah, I think it'd be. I wouldn't want to play in Manhattan in a 12-team playoff.
Yeah,
not a chance. Especially if they end the year how they seemingly end most years now under Chris Klieman. Of course, the big story in the Big 12 is that Malik Murphy will start for Texas this week. Steve Sarkisian doesn't know if Arch Manning will play. I know Longhorn fans are excited to. Yeah, Bracket Cat brings up K-State certainly didn't want to play Baylor at the end of 2012. Yeah, they were number 1 in the country, and Baylor beat them here. That was Colin Klein, their OC now, got stuffed on a goal line stand, and kind of I'll never forget that all the time. So yeah, Yeah, and I think Kansas State should be a tough out for Texas, Chris Cobb. Yes, they will. They'll be a tough out for everybody that they play, but for Texas in particular. And Texas, if Quinn Ewers isn't back and Malik Murphy is, just say they're kind of fitting him into the offense and he's not able to make big plays, he's just kind of there and driving the bus. Yeah, I think that's a problem. But he's got BYU this week, which their defense isn't great, and they'll be able to kind of rely on the run game a little bit more. So I think they've got a nice runway for Malik Murphy, but you never know. I mean, it's his first real start. He was charged up to get in the game last week, so you like to see that attitude. He wasn't walking in. Like sometimes the backup quarterback comes in, it's like, oh, crap. I was not thinking this was going to happen today. I was not. And Malik Murphy is certainly not that way. And then Steve Sarkisian said he's kind of non-committal on Arch Manning. I would say that they might go like a game or so if Malik Murphy doesn't get hurt. I mean, then Arch Manning would have to play. But if Malik Murphy's healthy, I think he needs to take every snap. And also, Arch Manning did not play against the top-level competition in Louisiana. He's still adjusting to what he practices against. So I would look, he's a Manning. He's going to be fine. But I would just take a little bit more time to ramp him up to where it's going to be. Mike Scarborough, our friend, you went and hung out with Mike a couple weeks ago in Death Valley, and that's what his assessment of Arch Manning was. He's like, look, the kid's got tools for sure. He's like, but he'd gone out to see him several times. And he's like, well, I don't know how good he really is because he should absolutely be throwing 7 touchdown passes against these guys. He's way better than all of them. There's nobody he's even going to practice against or play, a non-conference game against at Texas that is on any of the teams he was playing in high school.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we see sometimes with in the state of Texas, 3A kids who you think, hey, they look like they have all the tools, whatever position it's at, and they just come in, they don't pan out for whatever reason because they can't adjust to the speed or the physicality of the game or that specific position. I think we actually possibly are seeing it with a couple of Baylor linemen right now, but
yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. UT Parking says Murphy is good, but has no experience and he can't move. He's slower than Quinn. Yeah, Malik Murphy's a big dude.
Big dude.
He's a big, he looks to me like Dante Culpepper, like that kind of quarterback where it's just
honestly
a big dude, big arm.
Good name to drop there.
Big tools. I got to see Dante Culpepper play when he was a junior at UCF. I was in high school and I remember just being like, you don't see and you do. That's one of those times, and I think I may have told this story before, but my high school team, we went to see a UCF game because they were playing Bowling Green, and 2 of the guys from our team the year before were playing. They were twin brothers, and they were playing for Bowling Green, and so we got to do the whole go down on the field thing, and you kind of know, when you're in high school and you're like, hey, I'm a senior, I'm gonna start next year, and then a college is gonna call me. For me, it became really evident that wasn't going to happen when I walked out on the field against UCF, who in 1997, when this was nothing to talk about. They're barely even a football program at that time. Not Dante Culpepper helped take the next step. But when you go down, you're watching UCF and Bowling Green. I'm looking around going, oh crap. I'm not going to ever be like these guys. And then I see Dante Culpepper and I'm like, oh, that must be something like defensive end or tight end or linebacker or something. And then I'm just watching him throw like 25-yard outs on a rope. And I'm like, holy crap. Nope, that's it. All right. Next year will be the last time I put shoulder pads on in my life, unless it's some sort of gag. That was it. That was the realization. I remember because I had the same one. I had it in baseball early, when you're a little kid, because I stopped playing baseball when I was 14. But I remember being 13 and going to a spring training game that Roger Clemens was pitching in and standing by the bullpen and listening to the glove, when the catcher caught the ball and going, I don't know how I'll ever develop enough to where the sound of that won't make me pee my pants. So those were my realizations were Dante Culpepper and Roger Clemens. That's it. I'm a short kid. I'm not, I'm pudgy, and I've gone from pudgy to in shape to corpulent all throughout my life. So whatever it is. I knew I was going to be a professional athlete. And, but I do think about Dante Culpepper a lot. And I see Malik Murphy and I see Dante Culpepper. I see, like, if you can hone that arm and you can protect him and I know he's slow and it's not like, he's not a Robert Griffin-like runner or anything like that. But if you can use the athleticism he has, which is a lot of athleticism, if you can move that laterally and you can create with that, he's going to be good for somebody, whether it's Texas or the school he transfers to, because they don't build human beings like that. So, retired stockbroker. So why didn't you go to Bowling Green? It was in Ohio. I'm not going to school in Ohio. It's cold there.
Don't get Paul started on the why Florida State's the best place to go spend 4 years of your young male adult life.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, that, like, my recruiting pitch.
Don't get started.
My recruiting pitch to the athletes would be pretty simple. That's what I need. Mike Norvell needs me on staff. I can simplify it. I can cut it down to its essence. You're going to ask all these questions. Am I going to start? What's the ACC going to be like? What conference we're going to be in? Shut up, man. Just look around you.
Yeah. When you spell Tallahassee, just switch the H and the A for a couple other letters. Leave it up to your imagination what those letters are. And yeah, that's the reason.
MC Gusto, I'm not going to put your comment up, but I am laughing about it. I have to hide it. But I am laughing about that. He's a UCF fan. He made a comment about Dante Culpepper. Speaking of UCF, you see the helmets behind us. They play West Virginia this week. I want to talk about that game. We're going to talk about that game when we come back. Brandon Hellwig joins us next. He covers UCF. Are they back on the right track? And are they catching West Virginia at the right time when they're kind of scuffling? This is 365 Sports.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
During Jeep Adventure Days, save big on 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee Limited with values up to $5,500. Or 10% off MSRP on new Jeep Gladiators on all trim levels. Or 10% off MSRP on a new Jeep Compass at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back. Good friend Brandon Hellwig, UCFsports.com, joins us now. And Brandon, this was a team in UCF, and I know they're coming off a loss, but was kind of left for dead a couple of weeks ago. And John Rice Plumlee is healthy and back now, and there seems to be a resurgence. West Virginia comes in, they're scuffling a little bit. Is this the kind of turning point game for them if they win it?
This is a really important game, and you're right. UCF was, kind of left for dead, so to speak. That Kansas game earlier this month was just not a good performance all around. John Rice Plumlee attempted to come back from his knee injury, wasn't 100%. He got out of the first series, thought he felt something pop in his knee, got kind of scared. They pulled him, checked it out, later put him back in. He wasn't effective. And so, but the story of that game for you, it wasn't the offense, it was the defense. The defense, that was about as bad of a defensive performance that you got. UCF gave up 399 rushing yards to Kansas, and I think maybe they threw the ball once in the second half. It was just a really terrible performance. Hey, I mean, there's several reasons, that didn't help. There were some guys out with injury, and, so UCF gets to the bye week. They're able to get some of those guys back that were not playing, guys that got banged up, guys that were playing maybe, 60, 70%. They were able to heal up. They kind of went back to the basics. I think it's always a struggle for teams every year. It's like, how physical do you want to be in preseason, week to week in practice? You want to keep guys healthy for the season, but they decided we got no choice. We got to go ones versus ones. We got to tackle. We really got to hit this bye week hard, and they did. And it showed in a positive way against Oklahoma. I think a lot of people were expecting Oklahoma just to blow the doors off of UCF if you looked at how Kansas treated UCF. But it was, if everyone was watching, it was a game. UCF, was leading 23-17 in that fourth quarter. That defense kind of wore down a little bit at the very end. Oklahoma was able to put together, 2 quick touchdown drives to pull ahead. UCF did, march on the field and had an attempt to try to tie the game with a 2-point conversion. They could not convert. But, the different thing is a moral victory. But I think everyone's feeling a lot more optimistic about the last part of the season based on that OU result. But the fact of the matter is they got to win one. They don't have a Big 12 win yet, and they've got to get a win this Saturday or tomorrow against West Virginia.
Yeah, if they don't, that'd be 5 losses in a row, and they kind of have to really think about what the future is at that point, right? Do you start going, okay, well, let's see what you have down the stretch, because you have 5 games left. Maybe some guys that are red shirts are getting opportunities. But if they do get a win, then you start saying, okay, now you're 4-4, got to get 2 more to a bowl game, and then you start maybe hitting the goals you thought you were going to have in year 1 of the Big 12.
Yeah, I still think goals kind of pivot and change based on how the season goes. I think UCF, you're fully aware. I think they would have liked to have had that win against Baylor. That was a colossal meltdown that I've never quite seen something like that before. But they still want to make a bowl game. I still think that's the goal until that's not possible. If they lose to West Virginia, it gets a lot tougher. Although I will say this backstretch of the schedule is probably a bit more manageable in terms of, on paper, maybe more winnable games. But, I mean, that's not saying much, because every game in the Big 12 is going to be close. You can get beat by any team, any week. But they have Cincinnati and Houston in that back part. They got to go on the road to Texas Tech. I know that's not an easy trip, but Texas Tech really hasn't. Maybe they're kind of underachieving this year. They've got Oklahoma State, which all of a sudden looks like one of the better Big 12 teams all of a sudden. But there are some games they can win, but it'll make it a lot easier if they do want to make a bowl game, if they can get this win tomorrow against the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Yeah, so West Virginia runs the ball pretty well. It's not been so much C.J. Donaldson. He's been okay, but the quarterback position, Green runs it really well. They've moved the ball that way. This is not the wide open West Virginia offenses of the Geno Smith and Stedman Bailey days, Tavon Austin times. So for that defense, which has struggled so much in stopping the run, how do they shore that up down the stretch?
Yeah. I'm curious because Oklahoma, for their vaunted offense with Dylan Gabriel and pushing the ball down the field, that probably actually worked to UCF's advantage because it's really stopping the run has been their Achilles heel. Kansas State ran the ball all over UCF. Obviously, Kansas did. And Oklahoma, they're going to run the ball some, but, they're going to try to push down the field. They're going to do some deep throws. And UCF has had a decent secondary. And really the bigger question, you were talking about, did the defense, did they really improve out of the bye week or not? Obviously, there's signs of optimism based on last week, but we'll really know for sure, did they really improve stopping the run? We'll really find out because I think, West Virginia, I think they run the ball 60, 65% of the time. They're going to try to run clock. They're going to try to win that time of possession battle. And so it'd be really important for UCF to get stopped and get off the field. And that was something they really couldn't do against Kansas State, and they definitely couldn't do it against Kansas. So we'll know a lot more, this time tomorrow.
So how much does John Rice Plumlee's presence just change the aura and the vibe around the team?
Yeah, it helps a lot. This is, there was their expectations for him coming into this season. He worked a lot to get better in a lot of, the quarterback areas. We know he's a really good runner, and that's a really good part of his game, but just, making better decisions, pushing the ball down the field, and we really hadn't gotten really the full glimpse of how much improvement or how good he really has gotten this year. Cause UCF, like everyone else for the most part, they're going to open up the season with one of these cakewalk type games, and they were all over Kent State. That was a blowout. And then in that Boise State game, that was a game that was a lot closer than it should have been. John Rice Plumlee played a great game. He just had receivers that couldn't hold on to the ball, and things that should have been touchdowns resulted in interceptions, and then he gets hurt. So we really haven't seen, him play against, at least, the last week was the first week we saw, but he's not 100% yet. He's wearing this, he had the knee strain, so he has this big brace on his knee. So that the running part of his game isn't quite back yet, but throwing the ball, he executed a beautiful drive, when it was kind of do or die for UCF late in that game. You got to march down the field and score a touchdown if you want to have a chance to win this game. And they did exactly that. He made several clutch throws. And just the fact that he's back, he's the leader of the offense. He's the leader of the entire team. It was kind of a weird stretch for a while when he wasn't in there, and just kind of, even though the offense with Timmy McLean, they still were able to put up some points. It just wasn't the same as it would have been with John Rice Plumlee. So everyone's crossing their fingers. He's getting close to 100% and that he stays healthy because if he does, we'll see how good this defense is tomorrow. But if John Rice, if that defense did improve a little bit and John Rice and those guys can stay healthy, I think UCF has a chance to surprise some folks here in this last month of the season or so.
So I know the recruiting numbers are good for UCF, now that they have the Big 12 to behind them, and they have all this that they can say. Do you think that they were a little surprised at how far they were behind the Big 12 roster-wise, at least just for this season?
Yeah, I think that's kind of an evolving thing in terms of, where are we as a program? How are we going to compete week to week in the Big 12? I think its depth was kind of, everyone kind of knew that going in. You feel like maybe you've been recruiting at a pretty good level, but do you have the depth if a guy gets injured and isn't going to be available these next two games? If you get to a fourth quarter, are some of these guys that, maybe you're leaning on them to play a little bit too much during the game. You don't really have the quality reserves to put in. And that's probably what's hurt UCF the most this season. They just don't have a lot of depth. I think some of these transfer portal guys they recruited, you never know how it's going to work out. I think some of those guys maybe didn't quite pan out as good as they thought they were. And so that's just got to be the thing going forward. But it's always tough. It's tough to maintain that depth because then if you have guys, if they don't feel like they're getting the playing time they should, if they're not a starter type player, they want to hit the portal. They want to go someplace where they can play a little bit more. So that's kind of the fine line and the balance you got to do every year. You got to have a good group of starters, but then you also got to keep other guys happy and feel like they're going to play a role as well.
Brandon Hellwig, UCFsports.com. Brandon, enjoy the game this week, and we'll see if that swing game happens for the Knights.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, Brandon Hellwig, UCFsports.com with us here. Yeah, that one, look, if UCF doesn't get that one, look, they've got Cincinnati next week, so that can kind of, maybe it's not as big of a deal, but and they're, outside Oklahoma State, all the games are pretty winnable down the stretch. It's kind of the back part of the Big 12, but you got to start winning if you're UCF. You got to start getting Big 12 wins. Otherwise, your confidence is going to be shot to hell. And then you find yourself in a funk you can't get out of. And speaking of a funk you can't get out of, Baylor might have found their way out of one last week with Cincinnati. Grayson Grundhoeffer joins us next. This is 365 Sports.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgin Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgin Ford. Bird Colgin Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoke. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
Grayson Grundhoeffer, SicEm365.com, joins us now. And Grayson, to say Baylor needed a win last week was kind of like saying we need oxygen, food, water, and shelter to survive. They needed a win so badly. They got it against a Cincinnati team, admittedly, that's not good. But they did it by making a lot of changes, and there is, for the first time, some positivity to go around. After UCF, I think everybody was kind of like, "All right, that's great, but is that just you did that in this moment in time, and can you do it again?" They did it. They've got the back half of the schedule coming up. Most of the games are winnable for them. They don't have the more daunting part, but this is still a team that really needs to find itself against a team that's not scuffing like Cincinnati is.
Right. And I mean, Cincinnati, I know it's not considered a great win by any means. And Cincinnati was a team that coming into the year I expected to be pretty bad. And they've kind of just gone according to the script, I think, so far this year. And, Baylor, I know that you can point to some things and say, oh, Cincinnati ran all over them and Cincinnati did this and that, to where maybe, people feel like Cincinnati should have won this game. But the fact of the matter is Baylor was up for most of this game. They were up by 2 scores for a large chunk of this game as well. They're just, in my eyes, this was a kind of perfect get right scenario for Baylor. And they were able to come through, get the win on the road. They remained perfect on the road, which is one of the more, weird stat lines of this season so far. But, I think there are still some things to work on, obviously. And I don't think anyone's sitting here thinking that Baylor's a finished product yet. This team is going to have to get better as the season progresses. And they have a really tough test coming up, and a test that they really need to stand up to because, they need to compete at home because, frankly, their last few outings at home have not lived up to the standard that I think Dave Aranda wants to set for this program.
No, it's been 370 days, Emory, right? 370 days since Baylor won an FBS game at home. This one, not the ideal opponent right now for Baylor in that Iowa State is not a team that's going to win the national title, Grayson, but Matt Campbell has this team playing exactly as he wants them to play. The offensive coordinator change has worked. They're physical. They're tough on defense. They're everything Matt Campbell wants them to be fundamentally. Now, I know that he probably would have not liked to lose to Ohio or some of the games that they've lost this year, but the way they've been playing lately is Matt Campbell football.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a good program, and, Matt Campbell is a guy who gets his players ready for just about every game they play in, and so whether or not they're an elite football team or not, it is kind of besides the point, because when you see them play, they're going to give maximum effort, their defense is going to play well, but on the flip side, if you look at kind of Baylor's track record against Iowa State, even since Dave Aranda got there, they've competed with Iowa State really, really well. And I think a part of it is, I think the offense that Iowa State runs kind of lends itself to being a little bit more friendly for Baylor's defense. And I mean, even when Baylor was really bad in 2020, they made that a game and definitely scared Iowa State there. And then obviously beat them in 2021, beat them last year. And so I'm not going to say that Baylor has their number. I don't think they necessarily do, but I do think when you look at kind of the offense they run and the system they run, Baylor actually, I think, can compete with that type of offense because it's much closer to what Utah runs as opposed to, someone like Texas State or Texas or even Texas Tech, where they're airing you out and, running all these 4 and 5 wide receiver sets that have really given Baylor some problems this year.
Yeah, I think to me the big question is, because the biggest problem that Baylor has is physicality up front on both sides of the ball. So that's Iowa State's strength. So where the rubber meets the road in this game to me is, can Baylor match that enough to stay in the game, especially late when those things matter and you've been, in the trenches for that long?
See, and that's where I guess I know that I've heard that from other people as well, but I don't necessarily think that's the strength of Iowa State this year. I really don't think that their front, 5 on the offensive line are really that great or that special. They've struggled to run the football all year. I know the last few games it's gotten better, but they're really not a very good rushing team, and they don't really move people very well. They don't block particularly well up front either. And then on the defensive side, I think they're good up front, but I truthfully think their strength is actually in the secondary. And I think that bears out by the simple fact that they don't create tackles for loss up front. They're one of the worst teams at sacking the quarterback. It's kind of polar opposites from what Baylor saw against Cincinnati, where Cincinnati was so stout up front and weak in the secondary. This is more so, I think Iowa State's just okay up front, but absolutely elite in the secondary with Jeremiah Cooper and TJ Tampa. This team's I think they're like third in the country in interception. So I think that it's a little bit different of a matchup than I think people would look at in the past, where, the past matchups between these teams have really just been, who's going to win in the trenches. I just don't quite know if that's going to be the same scenario in this matchup.
So, Grayson, Baylor still is not – they didn't run the ball much last week. They didn't even hand the ball to running back until like 7 minutes left in the second quarter, but they adjusted. Do you expect to see the same thing, or do you think it's going to be kind of like a week-to-week mold the offense to take whatever that defense is going to give you?
I think it has to be that second part because, when they were playing Cincinnati, it was very clear they knew they weren't running the football consistently with their running backs. It was very clear that they knew that was not going to be a thing. You might be able to get some momentum here and there like they had on, one of their drives in the second half. They were able to run the football, but outside of that, they did not run the ball well at all. And so I think it's going to depend on the matchup. I don't think they can come out this week and think that they're going to throw the ball, 40 plus times in this game and feel great about the results, because it's going to be hard to complete passes on this secondary if you're not running the ball some. And that brings me back to the other thing, though. Iowa State's given up at least 106 yards on the ground in every single game this year. That includes games against Ohio and Northern Iowa. And I know Baylor's offensive line hasn't been good, but it should be good enough to get at least 100 or so yards when you compare them to those two offensive lines. And then you look at how Baylor's done when they ran for at least 100 yards this year. They're averaging 27.5 points. And when they've ran for less than 100 yards this year, they're only averaging 17 points. So a huge difference and a huge gap there when they are able to get to that 100-yard number, which has been commonplace for opponents against Iowa State this year. So I do think there'll be a greater emphasis on rushing the football, while also being sure to take some shots deep, which I do think you can hit a few of those against Iowa State, but the consistency in the passing game is going to be difficult against.
What do you think about the changes along the offensive line, which were Colton Price to center, the Barrington boys become the guards, and then Gavin Byers kicks back out to right tackle where he started the season last year and then was replaced when Khalil Keith got back, but now he's back there at right tackle, which might be his better position, although I was kind of surprised to see him still in the lineup because to me he was the one who'd struggled the most so far this year.
Yeah, it's really hard on the offensive line because I think you point to different games and you go, wow, that was a really bad game by, this individual or this individual. But the reality of it is when the offensive line is not playing as a cohesive unit, it makes everyone look bad. And I think we've seen that at times. First game of the year, Tate Williams, a really, really bad performance for him. You saw the Texas Tech game. A lot of people were talking about Campbell Barrington's performance, which, again, tough situation there. Gavin Byers has had his moments as well. But in general, this unit has to play well together. It's more about that cohesiveness as opposed to individual parts. But I liked what I saw from this new group. And for a couple of reasons. I think putting Clark Barrington back at guard at least solidifies one position on the offensive line. You're going to get good play from him there, which you didn't know you were going to get from him at center. And so I think at least you have someone who's played that position at a high level. You feel really good about it. So I like that move there. I think Colton Price held up pretty well, especially since his first game of his career was on the road. I think he'll be better as the season goes on. And then at left tackle, it was interesting because they kept rotating Caden Siraki and Alvin Ebosele for the game because, like you, I actually thought that it was going to be potentially Siraki at right tackle instead of Gavin Byers, but they elected to rotate those two young guys and then play Byers at right tackle, which I'm fine with. It gives them a veteran presence. But overall they had to make a change. I'm glad they did, and I think it paid dividends. I felt like they did pretty good against Cincinnati, especially in pass protection, which was clearly the game plan.
Yeah, I think they might have outthought themselves going into the year on that. Like, sometimes you can do that. Like, you just, we'll do this and this and this, and this is going to be the starting five. And then when it, like, I would have changed it right after Texas State because they were getting so gashed even in that game. I'd have been like, all right, okay, let's scrap that experiment. But they kind of dug in on it until the bye. And then when they got their 30,000-foot view, they changed it. Grayson, recruiting-wise, what's coming down the road? It's homecoming week. This is a great time to have guys in and make those pitches.
Yeah, it definitely is. I do want to hit on one note that doesn't have to do with the visits quite yet, but I do think it's a pretty important note. Lancaster, 4-star running back, Kuan Lacey, he decommitted from Nebraska yesterday. And that was a big storyline because Baylor has stayed in contact with him, continue to recruit him, continue to make him a priority, even though he was committed elsewhere, just continuing to kind of be there. And he took an official visit back in the summer. And so I think there's still something there. And Baylor's still recruiting him really hard and still trying to potentially land him. Now, he does have some more recent offers, like I believe Florida offered this week. So there is an interesting thing going on there. I think Ole Miss is a player. Alabama may jump back in the mix. So a lot of competition, but Baylor is still maintaining a really good relationship with him, which is, I think, a pretty big nugget that came out of this past week. But and then also the other storyline is Alex Foster, the 4-star defensive line commit out of St. Joseph in Mississippi. He's visiting Baylor this weekend, and then next weekend he's taking a trip to Texas, and Texas offered at the beginning of October. So a pretty big storyline there. They're going to visit both schools. We'll see what comes from that. Texas wants him to be the last defensive line commit in their class if they're able to flip him. And then obviously Baylor is doing everything they can to hold on to one of the biggest pieces in their 2024 class. Now, outside of that, you look at the visitor list for this week, and I mean, a lot of it is there's commits coming in town, and then the 2025 class seems like it's going to be a huge focal point for recruiting this weekend. They got 5 or 6 offensive linemen in that class on campus, including Duncanville 2025 commit Deshaun Bryant. And then a few other guys on that list as well. They're going to be visiting Centennial offensive lineman out of California, Drew Hill. He's a big-time prospect. He's got double-digit offers. Stanford, one of his bigger offers. He's got a few other ones as well. He's going to be visiting from California. He also visited this summer. So a good showing there to get a kid from out of state to come in and visit. Good relationship with Eric Mateos and a guy that they've been recruiting pretty hard. So I think those are the main storylines. I mean, outside of that, it's a lot of prospects who don't have offers and then some that do in various classes. But yeah, it should be a very interesting weekend. Some high-level talent that's going to be on campus.
Grayson Grundhoeffer, SicEm365.com. If you're not a member of the premium section, you can do that at SicEm365.com and read Grayson stuff. Grayson, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
All right, Grayson Grundhoeffer. Next up, our weekly segment with Josh Neighbors. We're going to run down the whole Big 12 this week and then throw a couple national games at Josh. He joins us right after this. This is 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagney is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagney. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter in studio. I haven't seen Emery in weeks. Literally, well, man, I saw him last week, I think. Were you here last week, Emery? Did I see your face last week? I don't know. I get sad when he's not here, Jack. It's just true. I'm just going to admit it. He's my favorite. Of everybody in this room, at any given time, he's my favorite. Everyone else is playing second. Right now, Jack, you're my second favorite. Jack's walked out. Emery's getting called up to the bigs here soon. Josh Neighbors joins us now, Cristobal College football. And Josh, this is a week in the Big 12. We just talked to Brandon Hellwig a second ago about UCF trying to snap their 4-game losing streak. They run into a West Virginia team that's also trying to snap a little skid of their own. And this is, I don't want to say it's a must win for UCF, in my opinion. It's not necessarily for West Virginia, but if both of them want to reboot, this is a good week to do it.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Paul, as always. So West Virginia is coming off 2 really difficult losses for them. Obviously, the Houston loss, a bit more difficult for them with the Hail Mary situation that happened in the end of that game. And then you've got the loss last week to Oklahoma State. And I think that loss in particular exposed to me that they're starting to run out of gas, especially on the defensive side of things. Ollie Gordon is on a tear. He has, done it to a bunch of teams recently, but it just looks like to me they're starting to run out of gas. And look, their offense can score. I actually think Garrett Green is playing pretty well, despite the fact that his completion percentage is the lowest in the league, I believe, for starting quarterbacks. But I actually think he's getting better. I really do, because they did not have much of a passing offense to speak of. And when they need to throw the ball this year, they actually have been able to, especially recently. Right in the game against Houston. Now it's Houston, but they were able to throw the ball. And last week they were able to throw the ball some. So I think he is coming along as a passer, which is good news for them. CJ Donaldson has not been as good for them as I thought he was going to be. He's slowed down. So their rushing attack, really, most of it feels like it's fallen to Johnson, someone there. And Garrett Green's had to do a lot. So that he is carrying the load right now. I still think it's a tough team. It's like they are a very difficult out. That's for sure. And UCF has not been excellent so far against teams that have, are currently or the remaining Big 12 teams, right? And Oklahoma, obviously, they played pretty close. That's off a bye week, though. So you're wondering, did you kind of empty the tank there? Look, UCF does have the better roster. They've got the better skill players. I think that's actually pretty clear. West Virginia, though, they might have some advantages, just like they've won games in conference. It's a little bit more of a mental edge, and they've come close the last couple of weeks, and they feel like, hey, maybe they should be 5-2, right, as opposed to 4-3, or maybe even 6-1 in some folks' opinions. So I think West Virginia here. Honestly, Paul, actually, I would disagree. I think it's a bigger game for West Virginia. I think this game is, because all the good things that we've said about Neil Brown and company, it's going to go sliding backwards in a hurry here. And you start to wonder, what does the actual record end up as? And if they start the year, that well, and they end the year without a bowl, Neil Brown is done, despite the fact of how well things started. So I think this game is massive for them in terms of making a bowl. And I think for schools like UCF, they should be better. Yes, they need to win this game, and they both desperately need it. But West Virginia needs it a bit more, just because UCF's still transitioning, and Gus Malzahn's his job is not in jeopardy at all. And they're still transitioning to being in the new conference. This is a game they should win, yes, but West Virginia is a desperate team because the coach is coaching for his job, it feels like, in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I took Neil Brown off the hot seat a couple weeks ago because I thought, they'd done it. He'd done enough, through that first 5 weeks of the year. But they've got to, if they get to 6 or 7, which is going to be 7's going to be tough. 6 shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because between BYU, Cincinnati, and Baylor, they can go 2-1 in those. I'm not even talking about UCF right now. You can find your other couple wins there. They should, UCF's on a 4-game skid, but they are at home, and John Rice Plumlee's back and getting healthier. So it might be. You might be right. It might be bigger. I think for UCF, they just need to get off the schneid. They just need to.
They do, yeah.
Get that dub, and things will change. Houston and Kansas State in Manhattan. I feel bad for the scheduling in Houston's regard here, in that they had Texas exactly where they needed them to be, where they want them to be, which was they had a shot to tie or win the game at the end. They got a bad call, which seemingly happens when you play Texas. Got a bad call, and, bad calls happen. Wasn't the only reason they lost, but they got that bad call, obviously lost the game right after that, and now they've got to go to Kansas State, who's found themselves, which is, I think, Chris Kleiman does this better than any coach in the country. We were talking about at the beginning of the show, when they don't have their fastball at the beginning of the season, he figures out how to get it by the middle and the end, and they close unbelievably strong. And they found it here, and now Houston, off a very disappointing loss, has to go up there and play a very tough team.
Yeah, I think it's really nice for K-State that they get another game to refine this 2-quarterback thing, right? Because that seems to be the way it is. I think Chris Kleiman's fully aware that the Avery Johnson passing attack is a work in progress, and he was okay last week, but still, Will Howard, the better passer of the two. And actually, Will Howard did some things running. That's the big key. When you do the 2-quarterback thing, they need to both be threats doing both things, right? We cannot be too obvious with it. And I actually think that's something that a lot of coaches do not do well enough. So credit Chris Kleiman and credit Colin Klein for making sure they are doing that. And I think it's another chance to refine that. I think Houston's they're probably spent. They have really emptied the tank in these last 2 games. Emotional win on Thursday night, and then last week, obviously, emotionally too. They're playing well. I would give them that, especially on offense. Donovan Smith has never looked better. The interception last week was horrific, but he, really is doing a great job back there. And they do not have much of a run. I know it's the air raid anyway, but they do not have much of a run game to speak of at all. They do not have a running game they can fall back on or rely on. And when it's on him, and it has been a lot of times, he's actually answered the call besides the second half of the game against Texas Tech, at least as of late. He has been answering that call. So, but here's the thing. Houston should have lost that West Virginia game. The way that they just got gashed at the end, they got a Hail Mary to win it. The Texas game, close but no cigar. That's how games like that go. The better program won that game. There's a reason why and look, bad call, whatever, but off the bad call, they still had a chance to get a yard, and they went with a rollout play. So they picked the wrong play too. So they had a chance to atone for it, even though it wasn't their fault, and picked the wrong play. So for them, I'm worried. I think it's one-way traffic. I think this is K-State sharpening the knives at home, getting all the momentum they need, because we'll see what happens in the Texas game, but I think that they know they have a chance to be kind of the team that's peaking at that moment. And if you talked about this, 3 weeks ago, and you looked ahead, you'd be like, really, is K-State going to be much of a threat? If you talked after that game against Oklahoma State for K-State, you'd be like, this is probably not the team that's going to press Texas. That narrative is flipped. They're definitely that team, and they can kind of sharpen the knives this week. I think it's going to be a hammer down situation for K-State.
Yeah, just as far as like stylistically, not a great matchup for Houston. Just not like just one of those things where Houston could be better than they are, but they've never really, like, teams that play like Kansas State, that's not really their bag. They did. Yeah, and you saw it last week, like the last drive, like they just ran the ball. Texas ran the ball right at Houston. Were able to they're like, Malik Murphy, okay, that one pass was behind, he threw that one rocket, and they're like, let's run the ball, and it worked. And they moved. I think the Houston defense will be a little bit tired now. Yeah, we'll talk about Malik Murphy in a second. But Oklahoma and Kansas, the best matchup in the league this week. Kansas has found a way to win with Jason Bean at quarterback. It is very unfortunate. I keep lamenting that we don't get to see Jalen Daniels, who I think is the best quarterback in the Big 12 overall. And the guy, I would trade him for anybody else. You put him on any roster, and almost any roster in the country except for maybe like 7 or 8, and they'll be fine. If a healthy Jalen Daniels is out there, they'll be fine. He's a college quarterback, gamer, can win games, like all those things. But he's not in this game. Kansas is going to try to do it with Jason Bean. I think last year, like Oklahoma beat Kansas last year, Kansas has Jalen Daniels in the game. I don't think it's the same thing, right? Or the whole game, whatever it was. But I think if Jalen Daniels is the whole game against Oklahoma, or that, it's a different thing. This is a different Oklahoma team. They got their scare last week. I feel a little bit nervous for Kansas, because Oklahoma is going to try to be making statement wins from here on out, because they've got a committee to impress. Right. Oklahoma's 6-1 against the spread this year. That is, I believe so. I think if you count the UCF game as a push, right? Yeah. The UCF game, at least for me, ended up being a push. Last week is the first time I think they have not covered a spread. They ended up somehow covering that game against SMU. It's pretty low, ends up being a pretty low number. But the one thing that's funny, you watch Oklahoma last week, they really did go with the let's hammer it, let's try to run it, because this UCF run defense is bad. It did not work. Their best rushing game was Dylan Gabriel's performance against Texas, and I am a big proponent of not really taking a ton from a game like that, just because it's always so wild and crazy, and that was the best game that he played. The good news for OU is this: Kansas has the worst pass defense in the league. So I would open that thing up, spread it around. And I mean, look, I don't think Alan Bowman's very good, but Alan Bowman had his best game this year against guess who? Kansas. Their defense can be had through the air. They've got some playmakers. That's the one thing for Oklahoma. You got to punch early. Kansas, with Jason Bean, has been able to rally at times, but actually they really have not been able to finish the job very often from behind. Last year, you think about this, the OU game, they were behind, they tried to rally, they couldn't. Baylor game, they tried to rally, couldn't get all the way back into it. They're not meant to play from behind. Their best thing is they're trying to be dangerous, to generate a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They're trying to force turnovers. If you can't get stops, and their red zone defense is bad too. If you can't get stops, try and force turnovers. And then their offense is the opposite, right? The goal for them on offense is to control the ball, control the clock. Now, with Jason Bean, it's actually a little bit of a different proposition, just because their passing game is a bit more dynamic and they can hit some explosive passing plays with him at quarterback. But they don't want to be chasing the game. You do not want to be chasing the game against Oklahoma. The good news, though, I think, is that OU will be electing to pass, so maybe that makes chasing the game a bit easier. But they need to focus on keeping this thing really close than striking distance, and being able to run the football, because that's where they're at their best. They don't want to be having to pass the ball constantly all the time. They want to be able to try and run the football. And Oklahoma's rush defense,
I've heard a whole lot. Dusty Dvorak said it last week on the broadcast a bunch. There are some concerns about Oklahoma's rush defense, and KU can scheme it up. So I think it's an interesting game. I roll with Oklahoma for sure. But, the good thing is, in terms of coaching advantage, you feel like KU's right up there, obviously. Maybe even has the better coach in this game, more proven coach for sure. So they do have some advantages, but Oklahoma right now, I think after that escape, it's a great wake-up call, and I think they'll be ready for this test on the road.
All right, let's talk about Malik Murphy. Gives me a little bit of the Dante Culpepper vibes. Big dude, laser rocket arm, like the throw you talked about was ridiculous.
Horrific. Just so bad. So bad.
Yeah. Look, you don't have to throw it 100% like every time. It's like when you're playing Madden. Like sometimes you got to throw the bullet, sometimes you need to give it some marks, sometimes it's somewhere in between. But I know that they're going to run the ball, and like BYU's defense is nothing to write home about at all. They're easily victimized over there when you get going on them. It's going to be interesting to see though how Sark builds this offense around Malik Murphy for what I'm assuming is 2 or 3 weeks. They've been very vague on Quinn Ewers, but those kind of AC joint things are usually 2 to 4. So I'm thinking probably 2 to 3 that they're going to have to roll with Malik Murphy.
Yeah, this game was about Texas. Like, let's just quickly mention BYU. I don't know how they're 5-2. It is unbelievable. That is a bad football team, Paul. They're bad. They do not stop the run very well. They don't run the ball very well. They don't throw the ball effectively. They don't stop the pass effectively. I just want to note this. This is their post-game win expectancy in some of their games this year. If you take out Southern Utah and Sam Houston. Arkansas had a 96% post-game win expectancy in that game. Obviously, BYU won. Kansas had a 100% post-game win expectancy. BYU had 63 against Cincinnati, so good for them, but Cincinnati is the worst team in the league. And then you look at the rest of their games. TCU, obviously, 100%. Texas Tech, 73% post-game win expectancy. You can shout out the 5 turnovers, the 5 extra possessions, but still it was only a 2-score game. So this game is one thing BYU is they're opportunistic. But this game is about establishing Malik Murphy. And I think, actually, this is a game where I would let him cut it loose. I'm like, you start with the run. Then you try to build that lead on the ground, right? Ride Jonathan Brooks in the first drive. And I'll tell you this, there is nobody better in this college football landscape with the script than Sark is, right? He is one of the best coaches when it comes to the script. So I think that's the good news for them, because if they can build a little bit of early lead, I think they cruise, right? The only way this game could get a little dicey, and I don't think it will be at all. I actually don't think 17.5 or 19.5 or 20 is enough. I think they can kind of put the foot down in the beginning of the game and then try to, all right, let's make sure we, are trying different things here to make sure you're set, because they might need all of it next week when they play K-State. This is about getting Malik Murphy in a rhythm. And getting him kind of feeling consistent.
Yeah, to me, the only way that this game is that dicey is a part of the conversation is if Malik Murphy or Arch Manning has to come in because he's the quarterback play is just bad. It's just Sark can't get anything out of anybody, and they're running the Wildcat and hoping for the best. But I just don't foresee that happening with the weapons that they have around them on offense. I think it'll be fine. I think that, they'll figure it out. But then again, it is about getting ready for what's going to be a very tough matchup for Texas next week. And look, for Malik Murphy, he's auditioning for not just Texas, but he's auditioning for the rest of the country too, because Arch Manning is there behind him. Quinn Ewers is still in front of him. We don't know what Quinn Ewers' future is going to be after this year. I think that if Quinn Ewers goes to the NFL, that's really good news for Texas, not because they're losing Quinn Ewers. It means that Quinn Ewers had a year good enough to where they're like, yeah, you better go now. So Malik Murphy is either auditioning to be ahead of Arch Manning in the race for the starting quarterback post Quinn Ewers, or he's auditioning for wherever he's going to play after this.
Yeah, and I think people have bad vibes about him just because that one throw and now the drive went. This guy's good. Everybody talked about how good he was. There's a reason why he's the backup. All right. And there's a reason why there was a competition. if Sark did not I actually thought it'd be better off just to hand Quinn Ewers the keys before. I actually think mentally it's better. I don't think having him win the job I don't think that actually gave him a lot. I think they should have just handed him the team because I thought he showed last year he's capable enough. So I thought just kind of making that investment was smart. But hey, they made the competition and he beats out Murphy. But you hear a lot of good things about Murphy. I mean, you even heard it last year about what he was doing in practice and the different ways they can use him on to prepare and whatnot. I'm excited to see him play, man. I think the situation he was in last week, he's coming in the middle of a tight game, with the game on the line. And what are you expecting out of the kid? This is a much more controlled environment. You're at home. You're playing not that good of an opponent. You had a whole week to prepare. The coach will be in your back pocket. The entire team is on your kind of side too, because they know it's you, right? They know you're the guy this week and probably next week as well. So a better situation. I expect him to thrive. I expect their offense to be just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Elsewhere around the league this week, Baylor and Iowa State and Oklahoma State and Cincinnati. We'll do Oklahoma State and Cincinnati first, and then we'll finish on Baylor and Iowa State because it'll transition nicely into our next guest with Sam Bradshaw. But Cincinnati, Josh, I had not watched them play a full game this year. I knew that they were bad, but watching them last week, they just – and I kind of said this at the beginning of the year, and he played well early on. But when you kind of have to tie your stars to Emory Jones, this is what you're getting. It's it is. It's like going to a party at your wildest friend's house. Hey, it could be fun, but you're probably going to get the cops called because. Man, you just don't know what's going to happen with Emory Jones. And there's no real way, nobody, this is 3 programs now, Florida, Arizona State, and now Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield has found a way to take this athlete and channel him into a quarterback because it's just all over the place.
Yeah. I don't know him personally at all. I don't want to speak too badly of the kid, but he's just bad. I don't really what else we're going to say at this point. They're bad too. There was a point last week where they were running. They had 2 backs who were averaging 8 yards a carry. Both of them were, and they were down 2 scores.
Yeah.
How is that happening?
Yeah.
And I know they had a chance there at the end, but back-to-back weeks, Vegas has been handing me free money because they made him a favorite at home. And look, the BYU game too, they did outplay BYU, but he made a crippling mistake in the beginning of the game with a pick 6. And then also the Iowa State game too. And also think about the game against Oklahoma, right? It was a close game, stuck in neutral most of the time. They just didn't have a guy good enough to go and grab the game or at least try and grab the game. That's been the case for them all year. He'll put up a decent stat line, but you don't have confidence. And they move the ball and it feels like they do not finish drives very well either. In critical moments, it just feels like they're not finishing drives. And so it's a team you cannot trust. And Oklahoma State they've got a lot of momentum right now. I know Cincinnati, the games can be close and tricky. This is one of those games where I would seriously consider limiting how many snaps Ollie Gordon has. The one thing we've seen with Oklahoma State in the past is, especially Jalen Warren there at the end of that stretch in 2021, he was banged up a lot. And if you look at the carry count the last few weeks, it's 21, 30, I think 29. And I think he had I forgot how many catches it was against Kansas, but it was 30 plus touches in that game. And then 29 touches last week. You're riding him. It's great, but you do have to be cognizant of, the fact that he's 19 and I know he's young as he'll ever be, but they need to keep him a little bit of a snap count, I think, just to make sure he's as fresh as possible. Do you want to be in a situation where he's got 100 touches in 3 weeks heading into the biggest game of the season, or 120 touches in 4 weeks, whatever it'll be, and they have Oklahoma. So I want to see Alan Bowman and company kind of try to spread this ball around a little bit because they're going to need that passing attack. Well, they're going to need it for sure. You're going to need Oklahoma. You're going to need something else against Oklahoma. You're not just going to roll in there and be able to just go unless you might be. You might have a transcendent game where Oklahoma, watches their national championship hopes, run into the end zone on the back of Ollie Gordon, but you can't have that. You can't hope for hey, we need you to have transcendent moments every week or we're not going to win. That's not a good, and Mike Gundy knows that. He knows that. He didn't get to this point by not knowing that and going, all right, well, hope our best player is Superman again.
because if that doesn't happen, that's where Lincoln Riley is right now. And,
right.
And they have good players all around, Caleb Williams, but right now USC's only chance to win is if Caleb Williams goes full Caleb every single week. That's it. So you don't want that to be Ollie Gordon where you're going into Bedlam and you're like, hey, you need to get 225 and 4 tutties this week, or this is
they need to be able to, they need to have Bowman, and like he's managed games really, really well. They're going to need like essentially the good Spencer Sanders performance to win. And I think I want to see that this week from them. Like, I think they should be trying to rely. Obviously, you want to keep some stuff in the back pocket for next week, but I want to see if you can spread that ball around, get those receivers going too.
Yep. Baylor and Iowa State. This is an Iowa State team that's playing really well. Baylor got their win last week, but Baylor's 2 wins are against the 2 worst teams in the Big 12 right now, UCF and the great comeback, and Cincinnati, who they had to hold off, and got a wild special teams play that allowed them to like build a lead for the first time this year. So outside of that, like Baylor's got to start winning consistently and not just in moments.
Yeah, it's. This game is just like Baylor's at home, so you're thinking they might figure it out, but at this point they kind of are what they are. Mm-hmm. And so you're thinking, hey, maybe they can stop the run this week. Iowa State's bad at it, but also Baylor's defense has kind of been like the cure for the common offense.
Yeah.
And I think that could be the case again. And here's the thing, with Iowa State, like this game to me is more about Iowa State. So Iowa State wins, they're 5-3, and then they're 4-1 in the league, I believe, if they get this victory, something like that. Yeah, they'd end up being because they're 3-1 right now. We just forget that like if you play football at Iowa State, you get better. How some kids don't get better. Every player at Iowa State just seems to get better. It just seems to be how this thing works. All these people had to step into all of these roles they didn't think they'd be in, and give them a few weeks, and all of a sudden now they've been coached up a little bit by the folks in Ames, and they look pretty good. And like Rocco Beck looks like a competent quarterback. I want to see like, can Baylor actually stop the run? Right? Is that something that it's just not in the cards in this year. And look, like last week they won. I just wanted to see a bit more consistency out of them. And it just, because it felt like they could move the ball. I mean, I know you guys talk about it all the time. It felt like they could move the ball at will, essentially all over Cincinnati. And so it felt like they could have scored like 50 points in that game, but they didn't. And, you just hope that like, hey, they could win like 31-20 or 31-18 or whatever. But no, that thing was it 31-29 was it the final? Whatever it was dicey late, and it should have been. And that's how Baylor's been. They have not been good enough when it's mattered. And yeah, I expect a tight game in this one. I want to roll with Baylor because here's the thing. If Baylor wins this game, they're actually above 500 in the league, which would be crazy. And you made a good point. Yeah, the wins have come against the worst teams. A couple of them have. But
their 3 wins are a big
turning point game.
Their 3 wins are LIU, a miracle comeback against UCF, and Cincinnati. And they have not won an FBS home game in 370 days.
Yikes.
I mean, so there is some weird stuff going on. All right, one national game I think I need to ask you about. The rest of them are kind of, I mean, it'd be weird to even throw them out there because it's not that weak. There's going to be upsets. There always are, but it's hard to pick where they are. But Oregon and Utah. You mentioned Utah in the way that they played Baylor earlier this year. They're coming into the Big 12 next year, obviously. I think everybody in the room here picked Oregon except for Emory picked Utah because they're just Kyle Whittingham's coaching them up in a way. But I think the difference in this game is that Bo Nix exists and he exists as an Oregon Duck. And that's probably going to be the difference in that their defense will probably give him fits, but he's just too good right now.
Yeah, this game is important. Oregon needs to start fast. I think the first thing I think about when I see this game is the line. 6.5, right? At Rice Eccles is pretty impressive considering I think Kyle Whittingham has won his last 29 of his last 30 games there, right? So Oregon is getting the respect of like a top 5 or 6 team, I think, kind of line-wise. And I think they are. I think they've got an excellent roster. I think they're a well-coached team. They need to start fast because it feels like things snowball at Rice Eccles. Like that is not one of those situations where you want to have a fumble and like a 3-and-out to start the game because it's 10-0 and you don't want to be climbing out of a hole. The one problem, though, I mentioned like 10-0, they could climb out of that. But Bryson Barnes, he was good last week, but USC's defense does not have a pulse. And this Oregon defense does. And so it's about when you turn Oregon over, if you do, and Bo Nix once again has been very good at taking care of the football. if you do, you need to get 7. Like, there is no doubt about that. You have to, because if you're trading field goals in moments where you need touchdowns, Oregon's probably going to beat you. I mean, Washington really maximized their performance against Oregon. I felt like Washington played the best game they possibly could, and they barely got out of there with a win.
Yeah, I think Washington, the difference in that game was Washington being home. Like, that was what it was to me.
Yeah, that was solely the difference in that game.
Yeah, that was the difference in the game. And Dan Lanning, knowing that, like, I don't like, I want to talk about this right before we go, because I think you and I are on the same page on this. I have no problem with anybody going for a 4th down. Situationally, if it makes sense, if you like, especially if you're like, yeah, this is how it's going to be. I think coaches are not used to this yet, and you're seeing, like, Houston, bad plays on 4th down. That Oregon-Washington game, they called a lot of bad plays on 4th down. I watched Mike Norvell call some really interesting plays that are like not.
How about our guy Gus Malzahn on the 2-point, the 2-point conversion?
Yeah,
basically
Gus Malzahn, like the 4th down, like in those situations, like, you've got to, especially if you're more than like a yard, like a yard or more, like not even like the full yard or more. I think you need to have something that is very high percentage, whatever it's going to be. You know, it's got to be super high percentage. And it just seems like everybody's trying to catch the other guy off guard. And, you know, if Dan Lanning Will Stein calls high percentage plays in the Oregon game, Oregon wins by 21. Like, that's how they could have flipped that one. They didn't, though. And, like, if Houston calls a better play on 4th down after the bad call, they might win the game. Like, it's those things that are kind of like they bug me. And I know that I'm just watching.
Going forward on 4th down was the right call. Like, just the play call was bad. You need to make sure you follow through on the play call. And but I think Dan Lanning's a good coach, and I was really impressed. Once again, like, I thought Oregon. I came away from that Washington game thinking Oregon was a better team. I felt pretty confident in that. And I thought Washington, wow, that was an unbelievable effort from them. Much like the Texas-Oklahoma game, I kind of felt the same way, but more so in the Oregon game I did. I think Oregon, though, is poised to I think they're going to win this game. I know Bryson Barnes has a lot of confidence. I know how good Kyle Whittingham is at Rice Eccles. This Oregon team just feels a little bit different than most of the Oregon teams, because the quality of player on the outside in this game is not as high as it was. And, Irving's a massive difference maker, obviously, too. Like, the Utah defense has been stout, but, I think this is the unit up front for Oregon that can just kind of keep that force going and going and going, that can eventually impose their will, because they've done a pretty good job of that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next week, buddy.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right, Sam Bradshaw, Sicken365.com, comes up next. He breaks down the film, Iowa State and Baylor. This is 365 Sports.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Nitsche Group Insurance Agency. With the Nitsche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Nitsche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Nitsche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations that will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingram at the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. Paul Catalina. I'm going to, in the next segment, Jack and I are going to talk about something that we did for the triple option. We're not going to show it. I want you to go find it on your own. But we are going to attempt to do some comedy sketches on the triple option. This is our first one. It's lo-fi as hell, but we'll talk about it in a second. And we will also, in my improv background, we'll take suggestions, and I'll try to write sketches up on that. But we'll talk about that in the next segment. Sam Bradshaw, a guy who does a ton of really in-depth work for Signum 365, joins us now. And Sam, Baylor got the win last week. They changed up the offensive line. They changed up their scheme and what they're doing. Do you feel like that's going to be the offense moving forward? Or are they going to do it in kind of a, let's see what we can get away with against this particular team this week kind of a thing?
Thanks for having me on. And I'm leaning towards kind of the second. First and foremost, I think the reshuffling on the offensive line helped them a lot. Feel like it gave them a little better matching of the skill sets and the different positions. It allowed Barrington to be a little bit more of a natural position, and you had effectively no drop off at center. You were able to upgrade a guard spot. I felt like it helped them, but you're going to have to see them tailor their game plan to who they're playing to a greater degree than they've had to do in prior seasons, just because they don't really have the ability to impose their will on the ground the way they have in years past. And when you have that, you're having to figure a way around the game plan. And last week, against a very, very active and disruptive Cincinnati front, that took the form of short passes, quick passes, get the ball out, and some RPOs in order to disrupt what Cincinnati may have had planned. Against a team like Iowa State, that might be a little tougher to win with because, you know, they're more than happy to keep you in front of them and tackle you immediately over and over and over again and win inside against the run with very limited guys and deny those RPOs by having those zone defenders sit back until they force you to run. They're going to make you block them because they believe in their front that they will be able to muddy up the works in your run blocking so that some of those free hitters that are hanging back in zone can fly down and clean up.
You told me in a text that Iowa State is like Air Force a little bit in the way that they set up their defense. Baylor did not play well against Air Force last year for a variety of reasons. But just comparison-wise, talk me through why they're so similar defensively to Air Force.
Well, I was not necessarily talking schematically, but I was saying in the sense that much like Air Force's offense, you can look at them anytime since 2017, and generally you're going to see similar athletic profiles at every position. The faces and names may change, but the general feel of who they've got out there is effectively the same. And they just maintain a high level of play with effectively, not overwhelming talent. I mean, they have a few guys like a Will McDonald or somebody similar to that every few years, but at the same time, it's not like they're getting first rounders every single year. They've got a few guys that could really play, but they're consistently performing at a nationally strong level of play with somewhat underrated talent year in, year out. And it's a lot like Air Force in the fact that the names and faces change, but the product on the field remains constant and strong.
Matt Campbell has a new OC. They lost to Iowa. Then I think they kind of let Iowa beat them again when they lost to Ohio the very next week. And they lost that game like 10-7. Was really bad. Since then, they've rallied. They've become this team that is a tough out outside of the Oklahoma game. They've won all the rest of them. They are playing Matt Campbell style football. What have you seen under this new OC that's allowed him to kind of reclaim who he is?
Well, I feel like the players are playing for him a little more than they were the prior year. And it's, hearing Campbell describe the change, it was similar to Aranda's description of bringing Powledge in instead of Ron Roberts. It wasn't necessarily the schematics that was the big change. It was kind of behind the scenes, those kind of things. And much like prior years, they do a good job of using their formations and using their personnel to put you in a bind. Last year, Iowa State's offense wasn't great, but they did a really good job of getting their slot receiver matched up on the backside linebacker over and over again. And he gave Baylor fits. And they do a really good job. I could see them do a lot with formations and motion to really make Baylor have to defend the edge, which they've been inconsistent with, and then use those tight ends to get specific coverage matchups that Baylor didn't exactly handle all that well against Texas and Cincinnati. There's a lot that they can do because this Baylor team's been so up and down defensively. And this is an Iowa State offense that, none of their individual skill guys are overwhelming, but it's every single guy allows them to keep the playbook open a little bit. So, for instance, Rocco Beck's at quarterback. He's not some elite runner, but similar to how Nick Florence was an elite runner, but he kept the quarterback run game in the playbook when he took over for RG3 the following year. Obviously, there's drop-off in pure upside compared to the guys they replaced, but you still have to account for that when you're scheming up against this team. And they've started to lean on him in the run game a little bit more in certain situations. And they've got a committee at running back. They provide a few different skill sets. Norton's kind of their big back. They got a couple guys that can really scoot speed-wise. And then, of course, Jalen Knoll at receiver, and they got the Eastern Kentucky transfer outside. They've got a lot of different pieces they can play with.
So, Sam, Baylor, what will they have the most trouble with Iowa State this week?
Well, first and foremost, scoring against that defense, just because that Baylor team has not been very effective at staying on the field and being consistent. And Iowa State's one of those teams that wants to weaponize forcing the other team to be consistent. They're going to play with their front three and maybe one or two linebackers in the box against most 10 and 11 personnel sets. And from there, they are going to say those guys are going to absolutely clog up the run. We'll occasionally do some pressures to help them in pass rush, but you're not going to be able to run on them, and we're going to outnumber you in the passing game. And we're going to change the coverages on you after the snap like a shell game. We're not betting you can put 8 plays together. We're not betting you can put 10 plays together. And, given Baylor's issues in the red zone, that could be really, really difficult for Baylor because Baylor's best chance here is if they can manufacture some big plays where they can score from distance, take a lot of that long-term execution out of it, and take that red zone execution out of it. I think that plus the turnover battle and finding a way to get this young quarterback to cough it up or disrupt him to the point that you get some stops that way. I think that's Baylor's best path to a victory here. And while I certainly think Baylor can pull it off, I think Iowa State's playing better now. I think much like Iowa State did every single year from 2017 to 2021, In non-conference, they either lost to Iowa or a Group of 5 school, but by mid-October, fixed a lot of their issues, and now they have a chance to yet again be a factor in the Big 12 race, whether they make it to Arlington or not.
So they shuffled the offensive line last week, and that helped them pass block a lot better against a good front. But they only got to Blake Shapen, I think, one time, which is way better than the infinity times that he was essentially getting to before. So they cut that way down. Do you expect to see them run the ball better against a run defense that's not been good, or is that just something that Baylor doesn't do well?
I think if they're up against a team that's not all that sound in run defense, they can be effective as they were against UCF. But I think Iowa State's pretty sound against the run, and they're going to make it tough on them. But I also think that Baylor will probably have a little bit of an easier time in pure pass protection situations where Iowa State's rushing 3 or 4. Because Iowa State graduated some of their best pass rushing guys, and they haven't been all that prolific at getting to the quarterback and getting sacks compared to prior years. So between that and the reshuffled line, I think Baylor should be able to at least protect a little bit. But whether or not that's just protection for the 5 to 10 yard routes, or whether that protection could hold up for the true deep shots that would really, really allow them to put Iowa State in a bind, that's where I begin to question it. And hopefully the reshuffled line can provide some of that upside for them. I think Iowa State is very, very effective at making the running game difficult, because it's not just those interior guys stopping those A gaps and B gaps and C gap runs. It's forcing you to spill it outside, where either that middle safety is hanging right behind the core of your defense, or it's a corner or safety hanging off the edge, whose zone coverage responsibility is perfectly married to cleaning up against the run. Puts them in a very does a good job of preventing putting him in a conflicted position where his run responsibilities over here and his pass responsibilities over there. They do a good job marrying those responsibilities. So it's a tough nut to crack. RPOs are difficult to do it with if your run's not really all that effective. Same with play action. So it's going to be really, really incumbent on Shapen. There were a couple plays last year where Iowa State disguised their coverage well, took away his first couple reads, and then they got pressure on him, and he had to buy time, keep his eyes downfield, and make some big conversions. He had one, I think, on like a 1st and 15 that eventually led to a touchdown drive. And it's largely going to be incumbent on him to keep this offense moving, because I don't think he's going to get that much help from the run game.
You've picked this game pretty close. You don't expect to see fireworks really in this one, do you?
Not really. Iowa State, if either team really went off on the other, I think it would be Iowa State, just because I think Baylor has a lot of youth on defense, and Iowa State can run the ball, and they've got a few different interesting matchups they could potentially get. But I think both teams, Iowa State, much like last year, is not executing at a level yardage-wise that's similar to what other teams do against their opponents. So they haven't really been prolific. And I think Baylor's offensive struggles are well known on this program. So I'm not really predicting a big scoring gap there. I just struggle to see how Baylor breaks anything significantly above 20. And I think Iowa State will clear 20.
Sam Bradshaw, SicEm365.com. Subscribe to the premium section. Read all his stuff. Whenever he does it, he goes deep and breaks down the film or TV ratings and things like that. Sam, thanks so much. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Thanks for having me on.
There you go. Great to have Sam Bradshaw. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll discuss a thing that we did that I want you guys to go and find. We're not going to play it because I don't know the value in it or not. I'm confident in what we did, but the last time we did something like this, it was divisive. So I don't want to do that today. But we'll talk about that next. This is 365 Sports.
During Ram Power Day, pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears! Bears?
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
So, just want to throw this out there as the World Series starts tonight. 19 years ago today, the curse of the Bambino ended and was a top 10 moment of joy in my life. Just throwing that out there, Jack. Like, you know, my wedding, obviously happier than that.
How many years ago today?
19.
Yeah. And who did they beat?
They beat the St. Louis Cardinals.
And who are you talking to?
You.
And what team is my favorite? Yeah.
It's a very joyous day. They swept them. Keith Folk threw the ball over to Doug Minkiewicz. And I was working at a bookstore, and I was closing, and I kept running up and down stairs to see the last 3 outs. And I just ran around. And when you work at a bookstore, like there might be another sports fan there. Like there were 2 or 3, but I was there with like goth kids and, hippies. And they're like, they did not understand what I was so excited about. And I will tell you, I have never felt more alone, yet hilariously cooler than being the only sports fan in a room of nerds. And I say that as a nerd lovingly. And, you'll see that I'm a huge nerd. If you go and watch the Triple Option Presents, we are going to start doing some sketches. I'm going to tell you right now, feel free to judge away on how lo-fi we are. We are so far away from SEC shorts on this. Like, we're not, I'm not even ashamed of it. Like, we are trying to see what we can do with what we have available. We wrote our first sketch and performed it, me and Jack and Garrett, and it's about Michigan State and their little minor controversy they had last week. And so please go check it out on the channel, share it around the world, and hopefully people will see our lo-fi internet comedy and do it. Jack has requested that he not act in any of the future ones, but I do think he did a wonderful job.
I didn't ask not to act. I just think we can take a good step in the quality direction.
If we get actors. Yes, I get it. I get it.
No, if I
If you
I
can
pay
direct
attention to the cameras when people are actually trying to act in front of them.
If you can direct.
If someone else can take the cameras, I'm happy to help you whatever way, Paul.
Yeah. So I actually I wanted Emery to be here for that, but he's again taking 447 hours to finish school. He's ready to be done. He's ready to be out in the real world. His parents are probably more ready for that because it's expensive to go to Baylor. There's a nice intersection though that you can tell your parents are tired of paying tuition for you and you're ready to be out of college, except your parents are thrilled you're out of college right away. When you have to get a real job right after, then it's kind of a bummer. And you're like, I miss college instantly because you can't mold your life as much as you could before. Although I don't think Emery's life feels molded at all with 487 hours that he's taking this semester. But we're very proud of Emery and his quest to graduate in December, which is just over a month away. Like he's got 6 weeks of school left? 5? 6 weeks?
Man.
Yeah. Jack, you just did that a couple years ago?
Yeah, I think I was losing my stuff.
Yeah.
I was stressing.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I wasn't stressing about grades. I was stressing about finding a job.
Yeah. I wasn't even I knew that I had some runway because I was graduating in the middle of the year. And so it was going to be I'm going to have a couple months to find what I was doing, and I had a few months of substitute teaching, which I did, and then I had to get a real job. But yeah, sir. Taylor MaCrar in the next segment. Just sent him a text, and this was just filler. But please go check out that segment. We're going to keep doing it more, and they're going to keep getting better as we go on. But we had to do kind of a test run of what we could do. You can't. No journey starts with 1,000 steps. It starts with a single one. And this is our first little step. As we climb up the Mount Everest of sports-related and particularly college football-related internet comedy, we understand that there are many things along the way. This is just base camp for us.
Also, isn't it going to look so great? Sorry. Isn't it going to look so great when we can kind of do where we started versus where we're at now? And we started that much lower.
Yes. I really want years from if you find it's like when you find an old Monty Python video of them doing something on stage in London. You're like, oh man, that's how that started. That's what I want this to be that for us. Oh, this is Chris Farley at Second City. I know those are lofty goals, but again, nobody wins championships by saying we're going to be the Lions.
Yeah, no, that would be a bad organization.
Yeah, exactly.
To go for.
Yeah. Nobody says, you know who I'd like to be exactly like? The Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I want to be the Georgia Tech football of sports comedy.
They won natties. They won natty in 1990. Yeah. So it's been a long time ago. Your parents weren't even thinking about you.
Yeah, no, they weren't.
Not at all. I was 8 years away from you, right?
Yeah.
8 years. Yeah. In fact, in 1990, they were hoping, I hope we don't have a kid in 1998.
They had kids in 85 and 88.
Yeah. So certainly they weren't thinking we're going to have a kid in 1998.
I won in 91.
Yeah. So there you go. When we come back, Taylor MaCrar of ESPN goes through the games with us this week. This is 365 Sports.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533, Chuck Verno at 720 North 64th Street, Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
Welcome back. 365 Sports. Paul Catalina flying solo as the Smokes are off doing high school football. And Jack McKenzie's producing because Garrett Ross doing the same thing tonight. And Taylor MaCrar couldn't. He was on a plane yesterday. He is with us today. So we moved him 24 hours. And Taylor, this week is not this is not like the big matchup week, but after we saw UNC and Virginia last week, this is the type of year that we're going to see some of those, or time of year we're going to see some more of those where nobody's thinking this game's going to be an upset, and they're going to come out of nowhere, aren't they?
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think about you're starting to get into the part of the year where injuries start to play a factor as well. I think about Texas. They've got a stretch of games coming up where they're going to be favored in all of these, but BYU at home, Kansas State at home, those are the type of matchups. And even if it's not just your starting quarterback that goes down, teams are banged up. You're trying to get as healthy as you can to close out the season. It's something that coaching staffs won't make the excuse, but it's true. That is a big factor in this part of the season. And that's where you see, a conference matchup where a team's going to be a double-digit favorite, and for what we saw last week in North Carolina and Virginia.
So Texas starts Malik Murphy this week. What do you expect to see from Sark with regard to a guy who's thrown 8 passes against the other guys in college football?
Yeah, I think it's going to look a lot different than what you saw against Houston a week ago, where he was thrust into action off the bench, obviously had not played much, very little, and he looked nervous. I mean, that first ball he threw totally airmailed, and you could tell that he was juiced and ready to go, but not channeling that energy all that well. I think it'll look a lot different this week. I would pay attention for against BYU is Texas is going to pick and choose when they take their shot plays. I think you'll see them more as a run-first offense, establish the run on first and second down, try and keep third and medium and third and manageables. And then the shot plays where they come from Malik, not obvious passing downs, sudden change, balls around midfield. I think, the coach speaky sort of cliche spots on the field where you would expect shot plays, probably where you'll see them for Malik Murphy. But I do expect him to play better this week against BYU than what he showed against Houston last week coming off the bench.
I'm going to hop around a little bit here because I'm curious your thoughts on USC of the last couple, like not only the 2 games that they've lost, but the games before where they almost lost. This was a team that was supposed to contend. Lincoln Riley has not brought any kind of, and Alex Grinch, no physicality to the defense. They're not a very smart team. It's Caleb Williams is Superman or they lose. What do you make of what USC has turned into this year after there were lofty expectations of this team to be in the Final Four?
Well, I think they look like what Oklahoma was in his last couple of years, except they just aren't as good a roster. Oklahoma was defined by really excellent quarterback play and skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, and then really not very good defense. And the best version of USC is not a playoff team. And that comes down to, I think some of it is scheme on the defensive side. Some of it's a mentality. They're not overly physical. But it's also a talent issue as well. You've got Caleb Williams, and then, like you mentioned, I think it's Caleb Williams, and then there's a pretty dramatic down. The thing that I like to ask is, of any major team, if you take away your quarterback, is this still a team that would compete, maybe not for a Final Four spot, but that they would still, be a top 2 or 3 team in their conference? USC would not be. They might not be a top 2 or 3 team in their conference this year anyway. But if you took Caleb Williams off that team, you're talking about a 6-6 at best USC team. And Lincoln Riley, they're going to have to address, obviously, the issues on the defensive side of the ball will be paramount in the offseason. But it's also, you're going to have to bring in a different type of player, especially on the defensive side. And then the last piece is the mentality. How do you figure out how to be a tough-minded physical football team? Because the 2 times this year that they've really faced more physical rosters, they've gotten bullied.
Kansas State hosts Houston this week. That Houston had a kind of a bummer of a finish against Texas where they had a chance to maybe get an upset and didn't. That being said, Kansas State and Chris Kleiman, I don't know if there's anybody better at adjusting to, and then Matt Campbell's kind of shown this a little bit this year too, and they play Baylor this week, but Chris Kleiman is so good at, they have early season hiccups and then fix it better than maybe anybody else in the country. Why is that?
There's no doubt. And a culture, it's you've got a team that they have buy-in into what their team is doing and what their coach is preaching to them. And there's certain programs that they have that level of buy-in, and you see it repeatedly where kind of regardless. Hey, I think about Utah also. Now that is a really solid program, but with what they've built over time, there are certain teams that they have to go to the portal consistently, and every year is a new year, and you're trying to figure out year over year, is this going to be a team that's consistent? Kansas State is not one of them. Kansas State is a team that you can expect to have them at the top of the, wherever the Big 12 shakes out. They're going to be there, and they're going to be relevant in the month of November. And I think that's going to be the case this year as well. In a year where the Big 12 is down, there's not a ton of depth in this conference, especially in the middle of the pack. Kansas State is going to be right there behind Oklahoma and Texas. And look, guys, this would not surprise me if they go into Austin in a couple of weeks and win. Assuming Malik Murphy's still playing, they are the type of team that's going to present challenges to Texas, where if they can steal a couple possessions, Texas should win that game. But if you told me 3 weeks from now we look back that Kansas State went in and pulled off the upset, would that be a stunner to me? No, I don't think it would be a stunner.
No, and they figured out the 2 quarterback system. Taylor, you played the position. It's not an easy thing to do because quarterbacking, it's not wide receiver where you can go out and get a blow, and figure things out. Running back, gotta, kind of recover a little bit from the punishment. Quarterback, it's about that rhythm and kind of being the band leader, so to speak. If you're conducting an orchestra and just bringing in different conductors every series, it would sound different and maybe not be as rhythmic, but they figured that out. How hard is it to be in a 2 QB system?
Yeah, it's hard. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that as a player, you selfishly don't want to have to share your reps. That's the difference between what you want selfishly and then being a good teammate. We see offenses all the time in games that we cover where, take New Mexico, for example. They have their starter, Hopkins, who transferred in from UAB, but they've got a stud freshman quarterback that's really good that they like to use in red zone situations. And so they bring him in and he gets a lot of touches. That's a group of 5 school, not a power 5 school, but we see it all the time. And the sentiment is still the same. if it helps the team and your starting quarterback recognizes that and your team recognizes that, then you rally around it. And there's a difference there between when it benefits the team versus you're trying to figure out who your guy is. Because if you're playing two, trying to figure out who you got, then you really don't have anybody. There's a difference, though, when you have different styles that benefit in different situations, and then your team has the buy-in, which Kansas State clearly does, where based on the situation and based on down and distance, whether it's red zone, whether it's third and short, that to me is where it goes back to if you can explain it to your kids and prove to them, hey, look, this benefits all of us, then you get buy-in from everybody, and it's also a lot easier for your quarterback that's getting taken off the field to have buy-in and support for it as well.
Oklahoma travels to Kansas this week, and Kansas doesn't have Jalen Daniels, but Jason Bean's been good. Oklahoma's not been great at running the ball, but Kansas isn't great at stopping the pass. Is this a week where they may not have to worry about fixing their running game so much yet?
No, I don't think this is a game that they can look past at all. Yeah. I think this will be a challenge. Kansas, this is a game that Jayhawks fans and those players will have had circled for a very long time. And this is also their last crack at OU. Mm-hmm. They get them at home. No, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination this is a game that Oklahoma can look past, even with a backup quarterback playing. But like you mentioned, Bean has played well. I think Oklahoma and Texas should win out. We should see a rematch of those two teams in the Big 12 championship. But like we led off with your first question, these are the types of games where if you don't come correct as a full unit, offensive and defensive side of the ball, you can absolutely lose one of these conference games. And then Oklahoma, if they drop a conference game, they're going to have a really hard time getting in the college football playoff, even if they win the conference because of their non-conference schedule.
Who among the top teams do you think this week has the biggest upset alert on them?
It might be Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. That is really a game that I had circled going into the week that you thought, man, that's a tricky spot. Oregon and Utah is another one that the teams are both ranked in the top 15. So is that an upset? You probably wouldn't phrase it like that. Ohio State going to Wisconsin. Ohio State, to me, does not play well enough on the offensive side to where if they go in and lay an egg against anybody and they have turnovers, they could lose. And you have to go to Camp Randall at Wisconsin. They should win that game. They're a 2-touchdown favorite. But again, when your offense struggles, look at Iowa a week ago. When your offense is that poor and then you don't figure out a way to create takeaways on the other side, you could lose to anybody. So those are a couple of the games that I have circled. And then the last one that I think you could see drop in the Pac-12, Oregon State going to Arizona. That is a much improved Arizona team. That game I thought would be more like a touchdown favorite. Vegas just has Oregon State as a field goal favorite at Arizona. So that's another one in the late window that I would have circled as well.
What are your thoughts on the Michigan scandal?
Yeah, look, I tweeted the other day, I thought that this was kind of a non-story for a while. And I got caught up in I would start with every team steals signs. You literally have, I was a dummy signaler when I was hurt and when I was redshirting, where we had 4 different signalers. One was live, and you've got all these crazy boards and the signs and all the things because you're doing all that because you know the other team is scouting you and trying to steal your signals. So it's a part of the game that just sort of goes unspoken. But all that to say, there is a line in anything with what is tolerated and where you go from trying to gain an edge to just all out cheating. And if you are videotaping and sending advanced scouting in a way that you really see more, I shouldn't say you see videotaping at the NFL level, but at the NFL level where they are advanced scouting every week for all of their opponents, there's rules against that in college because of budget reasons. And Michigan clearly was doing things that were outside the rules. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how much separation can Jim Harbaugh claim from what was going on. The way the NCAA polices these things tends to still be pretty strict on anything that's going on under your program. I do think there was a line crossed. I think players and coaches, what's been interesting to me is players and coaches seemingly are treating this as that wasn't great, but we don't care as much, versus media and fans are making this a huge deal. And I think it's just been interesting to see the discrepancy between a ton of outrage from media and fans. And then look at the last piece that I'll add on this, and I know I'm rambling. look at all the coaches that are getting asked about this and how they're answering it, because they're not biting on it because they're doing something similar. Now, they may not be spending at the level that Michigan was for this stuff, but I guarantee you Michigan is not the only one. Just like Iowa and Iowa State were not the only ones that had kids gambling on games, Michigan is not the only one that had guys out there doing this at this level. They're getting wrapped up in an FBI investigation. So there's a lot at play here. I guess my long-winded way of saying they clearly crossed the line, but is it as severe as everybody's making it out to be from the media side? I don't know. I think it's still too soon to tell.
Yeah, I think my problem is just like, if it's a rule, like, I know that you don't like it, Jim, but you can't just break it because you don't like it. It's a rule. And so that's why there needs to be punishment in this. And then, like, the fact that this is tied into that, the Matt Weiss and the computer hacking, whatever scandal is going on that the FBI is involved in. Like, there's a lot going on at Michigan that makes it seem really bizarre. And so I'm curious to see what the end of this is. Also knowing that the end of this ends with Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL. Like, that's
no doubt. And the last thing, Paul, I would add on it is what a debacle for the entire state of Michigan right now. Between Michigan and Michigan State, it's like, guys, can we get y'all to
stop
some sort of off the field issue or story, or let's not put Hitler on our video board? It's been one thing after another for both of those programs. And some of this I'm keeping lighthearted. Some of it's been really serious off the field, specifically with Michigan State. So, man, I know both of those fan bases would love nothing more than to just go back to not being on all the headlines right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Just go about being normal. And then this will also lead to radios and helmets, which has been, we don't have the budget or the insurance or some kind of thing that's been an excuse for years just because they don't want to actually do the work on it. But most coaches be like, yes, just give me a radio and then I'll never have to answer this question again. Ever, ever, ever.
Yeah.
They can go on to the next thing and trying to figure out how to read our lips or whatever.
And we should have moved a long time ago to the mic and the quarterback and the linebacker's helmet. It's less than $20,000 a year from what I understand to pull this off. And at the FBS level, that should not be an issue for basically every program. And if it is an issue, you got to have a serious conversation about at what level are we realistically competing at the FBS level. But overwhelmingly, think about the resources that you're having to pour, both from a human standpoint and dollars and cents standpoint, into fake signals and boards and time management. All of that gets avoided if you just drop mics into these helmets. And it should have happened a long time ago.
Look, in just graphic design for the boards alone, it pays for itself in 2 years.
Seriously, no doubt.
You're having to pay a guy. Aren't you having to pay a guy on staff or a couple, of your lower level GAs to do all that crap? I mean, every week and change it up.
Spending that. Yeah, you're probably spending that in FedEx Print and Go boards just for the ink and materials.
Yeah, to get a picture of Donald Duck. So they're like,
right.
What's the Donald Duck play? It's nothing. It's just a picture of Donald Duck. That's it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, Taylor, enjoy the game this week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, I appreciate it. Talk to y'all next week.
Right. Taylor MaCrar. Yeah. Hey, Mike. Again, I'm always baffled by scandals and why. Sometimes they make sense. You're like, I get that. But this one just never. I can't wait to see the end of it with the FBI and then, when Jim Harbaugh's in Chicago and he's like, well, I didn't really know anything about that. And I'm here now and I'm coach of the Bears and moving on. And he'll never really have to address it ever. Ever once. We'll take a break right here when we come back. Rapid fire through the week and then take another break and then the top 5. This is 365 Sports.
During Ram Power Days at Allen Samuels in Waco, get 2.9% for 72 months on new 2023 1500 Lone Star and Laramie 4x4 crew cabs, or $11,000 off MSRP on Lone Stars and $12,500 off MSRP on Laramies.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Samantha Duvall, Marketing Director for TexasBeefHouse.com. You know all about their great Wagyu beef and product they have. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com for anything you want to order. But, Samantha, thanks for your time. There's an auction coming up in the month of November. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so November 11th, we're having our first public beef auction. It's going to be here at our ranch in White House, Texas. It's going to be a live auction. You can bid in person. You can bid on the phone, or we'll also have it online. And we're auctioning off Wagyu and Angus beef. We'll have 30 to 40-pound bundles. They'll be full of steaks, hamburger, and primals. This is perfect for not only the restaurant owners, but also homeowners.
So if somebody wants to load up your deep freezer with some great product from a place that is just delivering all of the time, with Wagyu from their ranch to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Jack, call an upset this week.
Trying to think of my picks that I've made this week.
You made them on two different shows.
Yeah, days ago.
Yes, that's true. A lot's happened for you since then.
Yeah,
I'll call one right now. I'm saying Colorado beats UCLA.
I can see that.
I'm saying Colorado beats UCLA.
Arizona beats Oregon State.
Okay, good. We're both in the pack there. I think Cal has their best game of the season, but loses to USC.
Interesting.
They're gonna feel really good about themselves, and then Caleb Williams is gonna get angry. I don't know what who's favored in Duke and Louisville. Hold on, let me check that one out. I don't know. That one's going to be interesting. I'm the only one of us that picked Duke when we made our picks on Duke and Louisville, and maybe it's just because I just like Mike Elko too much now. Spread on Duke and Louisville. Louisville is a 6-point favorite in that game. And again, if Riley Leonard trots out there again, which I don't think he's going to, then that completely flips. But it's at Louisville. Yeah, I guess I already did yesterday. I said I picked Duke over Louisville, so that's another upset I'm calling. But this is not going to be a week where it's going to be easy to find those. You're going to have a lot of out-of-the-blue stuff. You're going to have some games that are kind of like in the, there's some games that are, just blah matchups this week, I know. But it is that time of year. You heard Taylor say in the last segment, injuries are really going to start playing a factor in things. And, there are some really big ones coming up next week when you talk about Kansas State and Texas. Look, Notre Dame and Clemson is a big one for both those teams in that Notre Dame can stay in the top 15 with that win. Clemson can, kind of right the ship a little bit. A&M and Ole Miss is going to be a huge one a week from now, because if A&M beats South Carolina, like their only hope of having positive, like their only hope. And think about this for A&M. I saw this in Sam Kahn, the Techsperts mailbag today, where somebody asked him, for Texas A&M, is the only hope for optimism going into 2024, finishing the season 9-3. And he said yes, because they've seen 8-4 before. But 9-3 means you went out and you found something on offense and everything worked out. But if they go 8-4 or worse, which it looks like they're certainly going to, because I don't see them beating Ole Miss or LSU down the stretch, then, and like I said yesterday, if you watch the top 5, I don't think Jimbo Fisher's going to be at Texas A&M next year. I think that's going to be all right, we've done what we can. We're paying a lot and not getting a lot in return. We're essentially getting exactly what we got at Kevin Sumlin with a little bit better recruiting. And they're starting to lose some recruits as well in the last couple of weeks. The couple of their four-star guys have decommitted. So he's starting to lose the touch there a little bit. So next week is a big one. This is a big one for Texas A&M. They've lost 2 in a row, and they need to beat a team that they should beat. And they're at home at Kyle Field. And if South Carolina comes in there and gets that win as poorly as they've been playing, man, I think you could, the heat on Jimbo, I think, is really high right now, although it's kind of quiet. If they lose to South Carolina, you can turn that up to just blazing 5-alarm backdraft hot with Jimbo Fisher. So, Georgia has the cocktail party this week. They have Mizzou, who gave them all they wanted last year, and Mizzou's a lot better next week. Penn State has Maryland, which could be kind of on upset alert because Maryland can score, although their offensive coordinator, Kevin Sumlin, is not going to be with the team. So LSU and Alabama is next week. So there's some big ones coming down the line in a week. And so this can maybe even be kind of a trap game week all the way around. And, of course, I think the biggest one next week, if I was game day, I would go to Austin for Kansas State and Texas, because especially if they both win this week, which I think that they will, then that one's going to be pretty huge, especially with the storyline of a backup quarterback playing against Kansas State, a team that Texas has had a little bit of problems with over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You weren't in any of that. I was just talking to me.
Yeah, no, sorry. There's a lot of stuff
I know. You're producing the show. So, HR picking stuff. 4-3 Rice over 6-1 Tulane. JT Daniels is going to show Caleb Williams how to win a big game. UT parking. Notre Dame losing to Ohio State still pisses me off. Yeah, it sure pisses them off too. They kind of had that one. So Dustin Archambault. I know Texas A&M has money, but man, how do they got money to go through coaches and still paying on some contracts? Look, that's a good question. And look, even A&M will hurt financially because of stuff like that. Even they will have things where they'll say like, oh man, we maybe can't make some of those decisions because they're not going. This, I think, is a common misnomer. Like, there are some sugar daddies you can go to help pay things down year over year, but they're not going to a couple guys and going, I know that you're a billionaire. Can you just throw $77 million, which is the interest on one of your bank accounts, at Jimbo Fisher so he can go away? That's really not how it works. Like, a lot of that money has to come into the general fund. So, but I just think that they're not going to do it. So, Texas has won 6 straight over Kansas State, with all due respect. Okay. True. But I guess I think of like Kansas State before that run where like that was the team that Texas just could not get through. But maybe they figure them out. So thank you for the correction, UT Parking. I appreciate that. So yeah, and he makes a good point. As soon as the class loses 4 to 5 guys, Jimbo's done. I think they're 3 losses away from him being done. Because if they're going to finish with 5 losses this year, or I guess that would be 6 losses. If they're 2 losses, they're 5 losses. If they're 3 losses away, if they're 6-6, that's only a 1-game improvement from a year ago. Then I think he's done. I just think So H&R picking stuff. A&M bought a losing roster. I would pump the brakes on that because I do think there's a coach who can come in and win with them. They're paying for a coach who's not adapting to the times. That's the problem that A&M has. They're paying for a coach who refuses to adapt to the times. And he went and got in the portal this year. Tony Grimes and a kid from Boston College whose name escapes me, like in the secondary, have helped them out a lot. They would have been in a lot worse spot. But they haven't done it schematically to where people just can't figure them out. And they're not, you watch their offense and it's every time it's like they are, it's like they're in quicksand. They can't, quicksand wouldn't be right. Like playing in tar with all this speed and like skill that they have, it just doesn't look good. We'll take a break right here. We will come back. It's the top five places Jim Harbaugh could be next year. This is 365 Sports.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 places Jim Harbaugh could be next season. I know people think that there may be just one, but look, if you think about all the scenarios, to me, I've come down with 5. 5 different places that he could be. Number 5, back at Michigan. There is a scenario here where the NCAA's incompetency winds it to where they can't really do anything to him, and he rides this out for another year, and he's back at Michigan trying to repeat as Big Ten champion and national champion and all that. I think this is the least likely, but it does stand to reason that Jim Harbaugh could be back at Michigan next year because I don't think the NCAA is really going to do much to him that's going to scare him away, but all signs are pointing into him being somewhere else. I just don't think you can discount the possibility that he somehow finds a way to skate through this. Coaches have made it through for much worse, as a matter of fact. Number 4, nowhere, just chilling, riding it out. This might have been...
But nowhere, do you mean Fox or ESPN?
No, I don't think. Oh, maybe. I don't know. Do you think he'd be good on TV? He might be off-putting.
He could either be off-putting or he could be that kind of like blunt, honest that would actually be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, that's true. He could. I'd rather watch him on TV than Urban Meyer, to be quite honest with you.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't get it. I don't get like he's not entertaining enough for me. Like, I know he has knowledge. He has tons of knowledge, and he's, more than I'll ever have. But TV, like, I need pizzazz. I need showmanship, from my guys. So, yeah, I think maybe Jim Harbaugh could have some of that. I think he could have some of that. Or he's just waiting it out because what he wants to do isn't available. Maybe the Bears go on a run and they don't fire Matt Eberflus and, or whatever. So, all right, the next three are all NFL jobs. Number 3, the Las Vegas Raiders. Part owner is Tom Brady now. He's trying to get as much as 10% of the team, apparently, from Mark Davis. I found this out. Here's an interesting thing about the Raiders.
Yeah.
Mark Davis has no kids. Now, he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's pretty healthy. It looks like he's really enjoying living in Vegas. And how couldn't you? But so, like, when I heard that about Tom Brady, I thought that was interesting. Here's the other thing. The Raiders have just the kind of starting point, like, and where they are, where I think, like, Jim Harbaugh could be intrigued by the fact, but Mark Davis is even more of a wild card than his father was and has had no success as the owner of that team. So I doubt it's the Raiders, but I would bet on him being able to make an intriguing pitch to Jim Harbaugh to come and be the coach of the Raiders. So I could see him there. Number 2, the Los Angeles Chargers, formerly of the great city of San Diego. I don't think Brandon Staley's going to be back. I think that they're spinning their wheels with Justin Herbert and they're spinning their wheels and they have Justin Herbert and they've got these great wide receivers and they're probably about to let Austin Eckler walk, but they have like all this talent on this team and I just don't think Brandon Staley is going to stay there. Now, Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, likes to micromanage a little bit, so I think that would prevent like a Lincoln Riley or maybe a Jim Harbaugh from going there if they're the college coach choice of the Chargers. But if you're Jim Harbaugh and you're looking around and go, who's got a quarterback that I don't have to draft, like I don't have to sit there and wait, that I can go and hit the ground running, you can do a lot worse than Justin Herbert, who, again, I think the Chargers are kind of wasting right now because they're chasing the Chiefs in that division, and they're not any closer to them today than they were yesterday. And the Chiefs are actually a little bit worse than they've been because they don't have those playmakers for Patrick Mahomes to really make you hurt. And they're still beating people. So, yeah, I think the Chargers are a little bit stuck in neutral, and maybe he's the guy to get them out and take on Andy Reid and Ernest and maybe win that division.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely don't want to waste a talented quarterback like Herbert.
Yeah, no, you don't. And they don't. Okay, number 1, and this one's the one everybody's talking about, his old team, the Chicago Bears. It's right. He gets to stay in the Midwest. He's like the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in that organization's history. Anyway, he's already beloved there. He can go there. Nobody's going to care what he did. The Bears are run. No, it's the Vikings. The Bears are they're not particularly, anything to quite build on, except they have a ton of draft picks going in. So right now he's got maybe the 2 of the top 5 picks in the draft because they have the Panthers pick from last year. So if he wants Caleb Williams, he probably can go get Caleb Williams because the Bears are going to have that pick right now. And there's a chance he has the top 2 picks or 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. So he can get his quarterback right away. Or maybe he likes Justin Fields. He saw him when he was in the Big Ten with them. But I think I would bet, I don't know what the odds are on this if they're putting this out yet in Vegas, but where is Jim Harbaugh coaching next year? The shortest odds, the ones that are most likely to pay off the least would be with the Bears because I think he's going to be the Chicago Bears head coach next year.
The only way I see him taking that job, because I think it's a stupid job to take unless he gets to be the GM as well.
They just hired a new GM a couple years ago, Ryan Poles. So
and he's done so great. No, seriously.
Well, he's a look. Here's
how bad have the Bears been for so long?
But he's amassed draft picks, so there could be an understanding of like, look, you're amassing all these draft.
How
picks.
did that go for Cleveland?
Yeah,
you can amass draft picks and still be terrible at being a GM.
Yeah.
If I'm Harbaugh, I am not touching that franchise unless I absolutely trust the guy who's the GM. And chances are, he only trusts himself that much. Okay. So he should get the GM job too.
Let me ask you this. If Matt LaFleur got fired,
yep,
would you take Harbaugh as the coach of your beloved Packers?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Emory, what's your favorite team? Texans. Emory, okay, well, I don't know. I wouldn't take him over to D'Amico Ryans. No. So, I don't know. I don't know if I would want him over Mike McCarthy.
Ooh,
I don't know
that's a
yet.
tough one.
I don't know yet. We'll see how this year ends. We'll see how that goes. I'm not optimistic based on how it started.
Yeah.
I would I think Paxton told me yesterday that he would love to see him as the coach of the Titans.
That could be an interesting fit.
Yeah. Retired stockbroker, which Jimbo comes out better, Harbaugh or Fisher, money aside, because it's all going to be about the same to both of them. Career-wise, I'll say it's Harbaugh because Jimbo ain't making it to the NFL. Yeah, that's true. I think Harbaugh of the gyms are going to be there. UT Parking, Mike McCrusty is terrible. How do you feel about Mike McCarthy, Jack? He won a Super Bowl. It's the one you got to see in your lifetime. Although, yeah.
Yes, Paul. I got to see it. I very much enjoyed it. I
was trying to think of the other, the Brett Favre one, but.
Yeah, no, I grew up watching the 96 Super Bowl, Super Bowl 31. I grew up watching the season-long highlight video that NFL Films put together. Loved that. Had it memorized. Freaked people out having it memorized. But Mike McCarthy's Super Bowl run in Green Bay, it was great. The key was that he had a defense, and the front office did him terribly by, after that year, going, we can just win behind the offense, right? And then they pumped all draft capital for a couple years into the offense, and it didn't work out. Literally the next year, best team in football, 15-1. Great job in the playoffs with that. But at the end of the day, McCarthy just got too conservative.
And when he and Aaron Rodgers were at loggerheads.
I don't even care. It worked well enough until McCarthy got too conservative. I'm surprised Rodgers didn't throw a fit on the field about how conservative the decision-making was.
Yeah.
It reared its ugly head. 2014 NFC Championship game where Packers had a much better offense and the Seahawks defense wasn't crazy good.
Yeah.
And they could only put up 16, and then a million terrible mistakes that you can't put on McCarthy led to the Seahawks winning that in overtime. But then the next year, the Packers get 2 Hail Marys and a single drive from Rodgers in the playoffs on the wild card in Arizona. And instead, with a injury-riddled team, instead of going for 2 in the win, they play for overtime, lose the coin flip, and the Packers lose the game before they even can get the ball in their MVP's hands.
Yeah.
You cannot be that conservative. I'm sorry, I could go on for go on McCarthy.
No, look,
forever.
but again, but it does highlight the point of, if all of a sudden if Jim Harbaugh is the top candidate for your team, look, he won in San Francisco. He won there. He got the Super Bowl, and then things changed and he went to Michigan. Okay, that's fine.
I wonder if the NFL game has passed him by.
I find him to be. Look, here's the thing.
He's more of a CEO head coach, so that the likelihood of that's lower.
Yeah. This is going to be the ultimate backhanded compliment. What all this scandal shows you about Jim Harbaugh is that I don't think anything's passed him by. He's always trying to find an edge and going through everything. So, no, I don't think the NFL's game's passed him by. I think part of the reason that Michigan is so good because he's brought the NFL attitude to Michigan, and they run it like an NFL team in a lot of regards. Look, he's sending out advanced scouts for crying out loud, and it's against the rules. So, I think so. I think that I don't think it would. But I think he's going to be with the Bears next year. But he could very well be on ESPN or Fox, and Or CBS has got the Big Ten. He could wind up there as well. But, I think he's going to be in the NFL next year, and pretending like any of this was just a distant memory. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to all of our guests today, Taylor MaCrar. Thanks to Grayson and Sam and Josh and Brandon Hellwig, all for being on the show today. Tomorrow, we're on from 11:30 to 1 on the CW for our pregame show for Baylor and Iowa State. So be sure to tune in for that. And, of course, Sports Tonight at 10:30 on the CW will be coming up as well. That's going to do it for us. Have a great weekend, everybody.